order. Everyone please stand, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Ashley, can I have roll call, please?
Jurdy,
Aye. We're here.
Fisher,
Here. They agree.
Briggs,
Here.
Cavalier,
Here.
Kressel,
Here.
Klatt,
Here.
Menard,
Here.
Hibma.
Here.
Okay, this is time for the open forum. If anyone would like to address council on any issue not already on tonight's agenda, you may come to the podium, state your first and last name and address, please.
Good evening, I'm Michelle Christofferson, 723 Sunset, Crookston. I'm here on behalf of the University of Minnesota Crookston. We start our first academic day tomorrow morning. So thanks to everyone who's welcomed our students. We had all of our returning students come in last week. Athletes started arriving on the first week in August. Oxcart Days was busy, and all of our freshmen, a little bit more than 220 students, new students, have arrived to campus. So we want to congratulate our admissions and our faculty teams on bringing that group in. On Sunday, September 3rd, we have a Golden Eagle Soccer Hawaiian Shirt Day. Dale, maybe you could bring your shirt. We're playing Minot State. Pardon?
You gonna borrow me one?
Absolutely. So that's September 3rd. September 15th, we have a tailgate for our Golden Eagle soccer teams against Bemidji State University. September 22nd, a volleyball tailgate against Minot State University. That'll be at the Evergreen Grill. And then please mark your calendars for October 16th through the 22nd. That is our homecoming. The University of Minnesota Crookston is celebrating its 30th year of baccalaureate degrees, and it kicked off when our Chancellor Emeriti Don Sargent gave our commencement address in May. And so for the rest of the months between now and December and January through May, please come on out and enjoy some of the things that the Golden Eagle Athletics and all of our Golden Eagles are part of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evan Meyer, 505 Eichhoff Boulevard. I'm the current president of the Crookston Blue Line Club. I'm here tonight on behalf of our entire Blue Line Club Board of Directors to address our city council and mayor about statements that were made at the August 14th Ways and Means Committee meeting. For those of you that are unaware, the Crookston Blue Line Club is a nonprofit organization that is here to support our park and recreation youth hockey program. Our mission statement is to support the opportunity for all youth to participate and play the game of hockey. The Crookston Blue Line Club has been proud supporters of Crookston Park and Rec hockey for well over 30 years. The Blue Line Club provides players and goalies with low cost or free equipment, team jerseys for each level, scholarships for players facing financial hardship, fall and spring ice opportunities, team and player skill development programming. We also provide coaching equipment and training tools, pay all tournament fees and associated costs. The Crookston Blue Line Club also coordinates day-to-day operations of all home tournaments in Crookston, promotes and recruits players and families to join our Park and Recreation hockey program, and provides assistance as requested by our Parks and Recreation Director, whether that is by physical or financial means. In the past year alone, the Crookston Blue Line Club has provided the City of Crookston and its Park and Recreation youth hockey program with $79,000 of support. This number includes ad revenue and ice rental payments paid directly to the city. It also includes costs and expenses associated with tournament fees, on-ice programming, and player and goalie equipment. The costs associated with programming, tournaments, and equipment are all expenses the city does not need to budget for that are paid for by the Blue Line Club. Since 2017, the total of these costs I've just stated is in excess of $384,000. These are just some of the costs and support, but not all, that the Blue Line Club has provided for the city. Our entire board was disrespected and insulted by the comments and misinformation that was expressed by members of this council. If we knew a budgeting meeting was going to turn into a public bashing of our organization, we would have made sure to have someone there to separate fact from fiction. When one council member asked, "What does the city get from the Blue Line Club?" another responded, "Nothing." If this is the sentiment of the council, and you really do believe you're getting nothing from the Blue Line Club, then I'm sure you are all more than willing to start paying for these costs that the Blue Line Club has so generously been covering for years. The Blue Line Club is a partner to the city, a partner to the Park and Recreation program, a partner to all of our hockey players, and families. We aren't enemies. To refer to an organization that has given so much back to the Park and Recreation program as a sacred cow, or to portray us as greedy and taking advantage of the city, is beyond insulting and unprofessional. At no point in time has the Crookston Blue Line Club ever negotiated in bad faith with the city of Crookston. The concessions and advertising agreement, along with the fall and spring ice rental contract, was drafted by the city. The council in 2022 approved these agreements. Many of the council people in this room were a part of the council which approved them. Since these agreements were approved by this council in 2022, not one of you has contacted us regarding our operations at the arena. If there were concerns before this, why were these agreements approved? Why has no one reached out to us? If the city wishes to negotiate a new agreement or revisit the current one before the expiration date, we are more than willing to do so. The Blue Line Club understands that as councilmen and women, you have a duty to the taxpayers of Crookston to spend their money wisely and make decisions that best serve everyone in our community, and not just a small minority. You also have the duty and responsibility, though, to make sure that you are as informed as possible on organizations that benefit and help the city before making public comment on them without any factual information in front of you. It was clear to us that many of you didn't have any information or understanding at all. How can this council have such strong opinions and facts when in fact they have no information at all? Has anyone on this council ever attended a Blue Line Club board meeting, reached out for a clarification on our dealings with the city, asked to see any financials or other information that would properly inform them on what we provide this community? I can tell you that in my time as a Blue Line Club board member and now president, I have not seen nor heard from any of you. Where are you getting all of these facts and information? Who have you reached out to fix or address these problems and concerns? Have you even attempted to do so? Because I know for a fact it has not been taken up with the Blue Line Club Board of Directors. We'd like to spend more time addressing the concerns of this council and setting the record straight on information that was presented at the Ways and Means Committee meeting. I'd like to invite any and all of you to attend our monthly Blue Line Club board meetings. We meet the third Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. at the arena. Our next meeting is September 20th. If that doesn't work, we are more than willing to set up a special meeting, or you can contact myself or any board member directly. All of our contact information can be found on the Crookston Blue Line Club website. I hope that in the future, this council makes sure they are as informed as possible before making any disparaging comments on organizations that are just trying to help the city. Thank you for your time. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. No presentations or public information. This,
Your Honor, do you want to check the phone
oh,
bridge?
sorry, Chad, anybody on the phone bridge?
No, Your Honor, I will close the bridge.
Thank you.
Agent logged up.
Okay, this brings us to the agenda. Does anyone wish to add or remove anything from tonight's agenda?
Your Honor, under the regular agenda, if we could add item 8.04, a resolution regarding a grant offer and acceptance related to the airport improvement program.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved, Your Honor.
Whoa. What do we got here? We got Joe and
So there was three.
we'll go.
Wait, it
Cody.
was Tim that had said it over here.
What you got there?
Did we get Tim and then Clayton?
I got Joe and Clayton.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Jurdy,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Kressel,
Aye.
Platt,
Aye.
Menard,
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Okay, this brings us to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So move, Your Honor.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Henry. Roll call, please.
Jurdy,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Kressel,
Aye.
Platt,
Aye.
Menard,
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Okay, no public hearings. This brings us to the regular agenda. Ashley, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Item 8.01 is a resolution regarding the change order number 2, agricultural road and utility construction.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Delane. Discussion, Corky, please.
Yes, this is relating to the Ag Innovation Campus roadway. When the construction started, it was determined that there were some circumstances that required some temporary measures to be installed out there regarding a sewer main and the lowering of that main. That will increase the cost by the amount that was set forth in the resolution.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Can I ask this? I know that we have some funding for this particular road. So is this increasing our cost, our portion of the cost?
It is increasing our portion of the cost, yes, but there should be sufficient funds to handle that.
Further discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Jerdy,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Kressel,
Aye.
Platt,
Aye.
Menard,
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 8.02 is a resolution regarding the Laura Musser Foundation Grant Application and Letter of Support.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll make that motion, Your Honor.
Thank you, Clayton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Christie. Discussion? Corky, please.
Yes, what this is Park and Recs Director Jake Solberg and Carrie Kirschbaum from the EDA are preparing a grant that is applicable to cities under 10,000 for projects for rural areas such as, let's say, park equipment or other additional items to benefit a city, and they want your approval to make that application. It's my understanding that we be awarded, there is no matching grant monies that are required, but it would allow us to make these changes in a rural community.
There is a matching grant, but it's actually in kind. Like if we have to put park equipment in, we need to donate our labor as a community. So it's an in-kind match, not,
No dollars, specific dollars.
right?
Carrie, can I ask, is there like a particular thought, like, of what you would utilize this funding for?
Well, currently we're looking at the Red Barn, and I didn't bring my notes at the time. Looking at the Red Barn project, there's a few different, like every year we'd like to build on that, maybe get a small playground in there right now, then the next year put in an amphitheater using that hill. And the year after that, or maybe the year before that, to put in insulation and finish out the inside of the Red Barn so it can be used by the community throughout the year instead of just during the summer. So we're kind of looking at a 3-year project. As funding becomes available, as grants become available, you know, initiatives change all the time, so that's kind of the idea on it.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Jerdy,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Kressel,
Aye.
Platt,
Aye.
Menard,
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 8.03 is a resolution regarding the approval of the comprehensive plan agreement with KLJ.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Christie. Discussion? Corky, please.
Yes, what this is, if you recall, our last comprehensive plan was done in March of 2016. So it's one time for an update of that plan. This is the same firm and the same individual who helped us in 2016. So we needed just to redefine ourselves. Secondly, many of the endeavors of the EDA would require such a updated comprehensive plan to be submitted with application for grants and awards of money. So it's time to update it, and it's time to update it for pursuing grants and awards of money. The contract price is in there. I've had discussions with the individual regarding the terms of the contract. We renegotiated some, and this is the contract that would be acceptable to us and to them if you approve it.
Thank you. Further discussion?
I would really like to see, once this comprehensive plan is done, that we utilize this more of a North Star than we have in the past. I felt like it kind of sat on a shelf, it collected dust to a point. And no fault to anybody, I'm just saying that it would be really nice. I know that the county does something similar with their comp plan, that all decisions are based on, whether or not that is the direction that the city should be going in. So I'd really like to see us to utilize that better this time.
Hopefully we will. We've had that discussion in the past with our last comp plan and same with our housing study, so. And our housing study has been updated too, correct, Corky?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
great. Further discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Jerdy,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Kressel,
Aye.
Platt,
Aye.
Menard,
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Item 8.04 is a resolution regarding a grant offer and acceptance related to the airport improvement program.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve
So
this
moved, Your Honor.
resolution? Got a motion
Second.
by Tim, second by Don. Thank you. Discussion.
What this is, if you'll recall, we made a request for some funds for our T-hanger construction, runway, lane construction, and we've now been offered a contract by the FAA for that particular matter, and they want it submitted to them by September 7th, so I thought this would be the perfect time to do that. They will pay, I believe, up to 90% to a dollar amount of a little over $80,000 if that's required. But this is what we applied for, and they actually awarded us a little bit more money than we asked for. So it's quite a lengthy document, probably 40 pages or more, but we've reviewed it, and it seems appropriate.
Thank you. Further discussion.
Is this something that's going to provide the ability to rent out space as well?
When the hangars are constructed, yes.
So another avenue for revenue?
Yes.
There is a waiting list for hangars out there.
Yeah.
Everyone is full. I mean, we could build 10 a year and it'd still be probably a waiting list, so. Further discussion. Hearing none, can I roll call, please?
Jerdy,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Briggs,
Aye.
Cavalier,
Aye.
Kressel,
Aye.
Platt,
Aye.
Menard,
Aye.
Hibma.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, reports. Corky, please.
As you may know, I was in California, and I got stuck there for extra time because of the hurricane. And if you live here, it just means rain. No wind, nothing else. Audrey and I met with Sam Melby at the county and went over a list of 9 items that we have a mutual interest in, and I think you'll be seeing some results of those. It was really a good session. We spent about an hour and a half. We've had meetings this week with Jason Carlson. We met with Brandon to discuss an issue on Summit Avenue, and the Ellers meeting, in my opinion, was really awesome. I mean, it was really good. That's all I have, but I'd like to give Shane's report. He's not here. He participated in a tabletop Clary training held at UMC, went with Darren and Chad. He's worked on the UMC homecoming event. He held a meeting with Tri-County Health Coalition on a new grant opportunity that we're going to work with them on. And he worked with Greg on a propane tank on a property and some code questions. And he's right now en route to Mankato for an EOC operations and planning all hazards event, which he will be at Tuesday and Wednesday.
Thank you, Corky. Let's start with Carrie tonight. Anything? No, sir. Thank you. Jake?
No, sir.
All right. Greg?
No report tonight, Your Honor.
Brandon?
I don't have a lot, but the concrete contractor for the Alexander and campground projects is in town now. So once the curb is in place on Alex and whatnot, they'll come in and do the blacktop after. The inoperable valve on the north water tower was repaired last week, and we got our bacteria sample results back. So we're filling the north tower again tonight, and by tomorrow that should be back in action, and everything else has been kind of status quo. So that's all I have for this week.
Thanks, Brandon. Chad, anything?
No report, Your Honor.
Thank you. Let's see, Audrey in here. Darren? No report, Your Honor. Thank you. Wow. Start with Tim.
Ditto. No report.
Okay. Delane?
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Joe?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Don?
Just one thing, the chamber golf tournament's tomorrow. If anybody wants to go golfing and support the chamber, sign up. Five members per each team. I think they got about 6 teams so far, so. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Clayton?
I'd like to thank the city crew for doing a good job getting the sweeper all. We had a couple complaints about it. And now I'm getting them back, so that complimenting. So thank crew, Brandon. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Henry?
Nothing from me.
Christie?
I just want to say that I thought that the Ox Cart Days this year was really great, and so shout out to the crew that did that. I think like there was several of us who went to the Ellers presentation, so it was really nice to kind of see that we can go forward in looking at larger projects, and I think that's a big thing for our city and kind of reviewing those things. The only other thing I have is in regards to Evan, and I had this conversation with you earlier, but I would love to see, I know that you provided a dollar amount, but I think that one of the larger questions that evening was just trying to find out where the money's coming from and going, and trying to understand our budget better. So we'd love to have more information like I had requested. So if we could do that, I would love to have that so we can have a better understanding. And I think that's part of the problem that we had here, was trying to understand and comprehend based on the numbers that we were given. So, but thank you for coming and sharing.
Morgan?
Nothing much other than just thank you, Carrie, for putting the Ellers presentation together. That was really helpful for better understanding.
Thank you. I also like to thank Gary for the Ellers. It took some work on your time and your staff. Thank them for me. Evan, I'd like to thank you for your information tonight. It's very helpful for us. One more item. I'd like to offer my condolences to the Harry Manoli family. Harry was a longtime council member for Ward 5. He recently passed away, so thoughts and prayers out to his family. Just a reminder, there will be a Ways and Means tonight, so nothing else to come before council. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Means Committee meeting to order. We got 3 items on the agenda tonight: building official budget, information technology budget, and the police budget. So I guess we're starting with building official. Thank you.
I guess my budget is basically one sheet. I think everybody's got that.
Yep.
Hopefully it's been sent out by Audrey. Basically, if you look at my budget, licenses and permits and charges for services have been added to my budget. For some reason, over the past history, that they were not in my budget. I think there was a previous administration that had, the fire department had the building official under their department.
Oh,
and
sure.
it remained in the fire department for many years, so we're finally getting back. I'm out of that department right now, so just to reason why licenses and permits, charges for service have been added to my budget. So you'll see that quite a bit of budget revenue has been added to my overall budget. So you'll see quite a bit of an increase, but overall, I don't think that changes the overall city budget. It's just reallocated. So just so you're aware of that.
So did, last year when we did our budgets, did we increase any of these areas that you know of?
For the licenses and permits,
Yeah, for
That-
any of the revenue areas?
I have no control over that outside of the permit valuation.
I know, but is there any areas we should take a look at?
On this whole page he's talking.
On the whole page.
Oh, no.
Yeah, on the
I would
revenue
prefer to do
part.
this line item.
All right. I
What?
think what he's asking is, are any of these items here subject to our control, or are they just state mandated fees?
They can be altered by the city through our permitting, but the state has some control that they minimize. There's a maximum amount you can charge. Right now, I think we're below that, but we can up those fees, but I'd have to verify how much we could go up.
I think like the bigger question, right, is like, have we not looked at these fees for 25 years and are they at market rate, or is it something that, you know, do you think that we're in a good place with these, or do you think that we need to reevaluate them?
I think we need to reevaluate them. I mean,
Okay.
I think this has been sitting here for the whole time I've been here, 5 years, 4.5 years. And I think I've seen other rates. It seems like they could be taken a look at, for
Okay.
sure.
And so the proposal of new rates, Corky, when is that due?
Well, that's part of this budget.
Okay.
So we will look at those between now and the time we come back for the final budget presentation to see, one, what is the limit allowed, and then a recommendation about where we should be and where we come from. If I do remember from last year, I believe we did raise slightly, either the plumbing fees or the building and sign fees, but only slightly. But we'll look at those.
It'd be nice to see how we compare to maybe like cities, just to make sure we're in the ballpark, you know, if it's,
And that's what we do.
Okay.
When we look at fees from any department, we get a hold of Thief River Falls, East Grand Forks, other cities of comparable size, and we will do that now with these. I thought it was, or we thought it was important that you knew that it was being shifted out of fire
Sure.
to building official, where it really should be.
Yep, and we can get that comparison for you, no problem. That's-
perfect, thank you.
That's all public knowledge.
Yeah. And those are generally approved at the same time, like all of our fees, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Typically, yes.
Just want to double check on that. All right.
Just so you know, too, there is one item that was added in, the gasoline oil that was in the expenditure. I'm just going through changes that you don't typically see, or that it was not there previously, and then the last line, community improvement, but then I'll go through it individually here. Revenues and permits, that's at 37,300 valuation or revenue. And then for that, that's basically the permitting fees, gas fitting, plumbing, street permits. I mean, it basically is my revenue internally for permits, for the building permits that go through, that I have to review and or send out a permit for people that submit their applications for state building code or any other revenue stream that requires our permit, curb cuts, for example, that we need to have.
So the proposed budget, is that like since we can't see what 21 and 22 is here, is that pretty on par for what we expected in those two previous actuals?
I would say due to COVID, the last 2 years, I think it was a little bit lower, but this past year, this year itself has been actually lower than that even. So I think I looked it up, it was 10.5 million last year, and I think we're only about approximately 5 right now, so we're substantially lower.
Okay.
But I've been talking to other building officials across the state, or at least in the region. That can change year to year, region to region, and one large project like, for example, Ag Innovation could just skyrocket the valuation of 1 year. So
Sure.
it
That
can-
makes sense.
It can vary widely.
Okay.
So Greg, the subtotal for licenses and permits, is that where we may anticipate seeing an increase if we do adjust the rates?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Okay.
If we did adjust the rates, but also it depends on the valuation, how much of that construction dollar actually comes in. Because it's based on the base valuation times that value, the base value of what the permit fee is.
And Corky, just for clarification for me, since I've not been through a budgeting process, so there is a moment in time when we review all fees?
Yes.
For every department?
Yes.
In total?
Yes. At the
Okay.
beginning of the year, we can introduce and reestablish, correct, change fees. But that's passed through the council by resolution.
Okay.
Can I
Thank you.
clarify that? Is that all fees?
Can be, that we have control over.
Okay.
There's some fees we can't control, they're state mandated, but like fines and penalties, fees for Greg, all those kind of fees, license fees. If you remember last year, transient merchant fees, we can look
Yeah.
at all of those, yes.
Okay, I would love to actually have some time to like just sit through and look through all those and then have a conversation at one of these meetings.
Well, we can do that. A lot of fees, and we just passed them at the beginning of this year, but they're available to look at anytime you want.
Yeah. Can you like get one document that has all that, would be great.
We have that, yes.
Wonderful.
Can I get a copy of that?
Why don't we just send it to everybody?
Perfect.
If you're making campfires and you
Yeah.
want to hear it, go ahead.
All right.
Yes, we'll get you a
Perfect.
copy
Thank you.
Good.
of all fees.
Okay.
So again, licenses and permits, again, this is just the proposed budget for 2024 is 37.3, based on the previous years, and that's to get an estimate. Subtotal charges for service for the other categories. The one item there, that 4102, that's under that 31,810, that's alley and street vacation, that actually should be under public streets, or public works, I should say.
Okay.
So there's a reason, and you'd have to ask Audrey about that, why it cannot be transferred to, it's under mine right now, but she's gonna transfer it to Public Works eventually.
So did Brandon have that budgeted in then?
There's
Only
no
like-
budget.
There's no budget for it.
It just had that 200, that's the reason why it's in there. It's from this current year, and there's a reason it has to transfer over. You'd have to ask Audrey about that one.
We've collected nothing though,
Correct.
but we budgeted.
Correct. It's just a line item that in case of a street vacation, there's public meetings required for that.
And publications are required for those public meetings, so we just put it in there if there was going to be an alley or a street vacation.
Okay.
Okay.
There's not very many that happen.
Well, no, that's why you see all the zeros from the year.
Right.
Going down that same, underneath that, zoning and special use permits, just estimating 600 based on 6 zoning, special use permits, variances, conditional use permits. That's just estimating 6 for the year 2024. Plan check fees on the next one, that $1,500, that's a sub-value of the rest, the license and permits. It's basically a 25% adder fee, or not adder. It's a review fee for my services to make sure that the codes are met for plans and specs that are submitted by the contractor and or the owners for plans.
So
So-
why did it not have a, money in that in last?
Because
couple?
that's a charge for service, it's not a license fee. It's my service versus a permit fee. In other words, it's my time and review.
And just hadn't charged for it in the past?
No, that has always been charged in the past for larger review
Just that we
process.
haven't had them.
Okay. I'm just like, well, so why is it 0? Okay. We just haven't had anything that
We
you would
haven't
need
had
to
the
check.
necessity of doing that.
Okay.
Okay,
Greg, is that on the plan check fee, you got 1,500, does it take you more time to
What
kinda
are you just talking about?
double check the codes or whatever? I'm wondering if that's too low, what you're charging to.
I'm kind of, to be honest, I want to be conservative rather than too high, because I don't want to plan on being at too much in the budget, rather than, if it's too low, I can at least have a budget item that's of increased revenue for my department, I guess is the way I'm looking at it.
Now, that's really determined by projects that come forward to you.
Absolutely,
So
this is just a flat-out guess, to be honest.
Right. So if nobody's building, you don't have plans to review.
If there's not a large project and there's no review, I have 0.
Yep.
Maps and publications for services, I do not charge out for anything for my current usage, so I do not have any charges.
Can you explain what that is?
I do not have an explanation. Maybe in the past, people published maps for the public. I do not do that.
Okay.
Building permit surcharge, that was added in. It's a 0 current fee right now. It's surcharges that I have to send in to the state quarterly and at the end of the year as a zero-sum game. So that's why it's all zeros on there. But it is an account that I have to use to store that fee, submit it to the state, and then get it to 0. So that's where that's coming from. So again, the subtotal charges for that is 2,100, and for that charges for service, so 39,400 for the overall revenue stream. And as you can see, and just to really quick go down to the bottom, that 148,000 from for the total budget from the current budget of 114 is actually, with the 39,000, is actually less. Basically, it's 40,000 more than if it would be 154 if I would have added it in to last year's budget. So it's actually, I've decreased my budget from 2023, just so you have a reference. If that makes sense.
I'm not following.
If you look at the current budget line under 2023, 114,000.
Yep.
And if you look under the 2024 proposed budget of 39,400, which is basically 40,000, add those two numbers together to the 114 to the 40, basically. That's 154. Well, right now my proposed budget is only 148. So what I'm saying is I've actually lessened my budget from last year, or from this year.
Is that because the revenue for permits is going into your overall?
No, it's because I've lessened my budget expenditures, which I'll be going through next.
Okay.
I just wanted you to have reference for what's happening.
Can I just go back really quick? So we're still collecting a surcharge that has to be sent to the state, so shouldn't we have something showing as a credit and then a debit somewhere else when we then sent that to the state?
That was, I'm not an accountant, I would have to.
That's what actually happens, but it's not reflected here because we don't get a net out of anything. It's collected and then it's paid out. It's not actually revenue to us. It's more of a conduit.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, let's go.
And the one I would like to go over is for the big expenditure, the increase in my expenditure, the largest one is salary. I had a $5,000 increase above and beyond the 3.5% increase. I passed my building official, commercial, and commercial licensing for the state of Minnesota. So basically, I had in my contract a $5,000 adder. So That's where that larger increase comes from. That's where the 79,000, that's with an additional 2% increase estimated for this coming year. So if you go down, to continue the columns here, I do not do anything with para, FICA, Medicare, any of the pension.
Those are all done by Audrey in her capacity. She's plugged in the percentages and that's what's calculated.
Office supplies stayed the same, exactly the same. The one item that I did add, we did add in is $1,000 for my gas charges for my vehicle. Since I do have one individual vehicle, it's a city-owned, I just needed a charge account. We went to a P card, and that's what I'll be using for that charge.
Greg, is that the vehicle that overheated?
No, I don't.
Remember?
Oh,
seeing you parked up
I
by
have
my house?
antifreeze that it just goes down. So yeah, it does overheat, but if I get the antifreeze in there, it's okay.
Okay.
I apologize there.
Put a line item for antifreeze in there.
Yep.
Corey, can I just double check on this? So the salary piece and the increase by 5,000, is that part of the agreement?
Yes.
Or once we've gotten the building permit?
Yes, what he did.
Or the licensing?
Yes, once he
Okay.
got his licensure that we paid privately to another person to go ahead and inspect for us, Greg is now able to do that. That was one of his performance add-ons. So if you add 5,000 to the 73, you get 78, 68, and then calculating the 3% increase for this year gives you the 69,615.
79,650.
79,615.
So that was part of his contract?
Yes.
That was when I first signed on, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And just to go along with that, the contractual that, there's a contractual, I believe, in 2021 that's shown in that 21 column. I believe that was Brad Bale, that was for in-depth inspection. He's basically he's a
More commercial, wasn't it?
Well, he's a commercial inspector.
He's a
licensure
commercial inspector, but he can be hired on for commercial inspections for cities. And he also did it as on a fee basis as well. So they hired him on for a short term, and then they did it on an as-use basis for the professional fees later on. That's where these other 3155 for 2022, for example, comes from.
Okay.
So that fee is going away as far as paying somebody else for commercial review and or their signature. So the budget in that 23 was 8,000. I'm asking to drop it to 5,000. And the reason I asked to just even remain at 5,000 is that in case there's a large industrial project that I cannot personally review, for example, a large civil or structural or possibly a chemical process that I cannot do the process, I may have to call and ask for additional help. And what I would call the state and ask who would be able to review this, and they would probably forward me to somebody that would be able to do that.
And just for clarification, then, the reason we're dropping it down is that because now you have your licensing, then like Woodseth doesn't have to sign off on things, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
In-depth does not have to sign off on anything.
Okay, great.
Communications dropped from 800 to 600 based on the fees that I've been told. I have that amount, I think it was on my notes down here, but it's under approximately $600 a year. Travel training, I dropped it down 2 years ago, I believe it was. And again, this year I consistently kept it low just because of my higher expense for the salary. So I'm trying not to exceed my budget. So I would like to ask to keep it at 4,000 just to maintain my training over time.
Is there like continuing education that you need to take on a regular basis?
Absolutely. I need that. I think it's 35 credits every 2 years.
Okay.
And printing and advertising, that's the one if you see in my notes, I did have a request from Woodseth and Nolting we need to update our zoning maps and our city maps. I do have a quote for that. I will get another one if you request it, but I just want to have approval to be able to upgrade this. The last one I can find is from 2016. We do not have current maps, so I think we need
The
to.
ward boundaries are not properly set out in current maps.
That's based on the
Last
most recent census, right?
Yes. We did redefine them by council action,
Yep.
but the maps do not reflect those.
Don't we have a map that reflects that?
Yes, a small one, but it's not a
Big one.
commercial size
Right,
and that
right.
you need for various items.
We have PDF size, but we do not have full size.
And that would fall under which, I'm sorry, which account?
I'm
Printing and
sorry.
advertising?
Since we're
Yes.
talking about large maps, and I think I mentioned this before, but could we get a map like that size to hang down here when we're talking about the different sections of town, like the
That's what we're talking about here.
That's
what
what we
this
are
is?
talking about here. That's exactly what I'm saying. Larger size,
for like the
The wards.
not wards, but the what's the names that we call the other
Additions?
additions? Yes, like the.
Oh, yeah.
Because when
Sampson's.
sometimes I think, especially not being from here my whole life, when you guys talk about the Sampson's edition
Oh,
and
I
all
see.
of those, I mean, it's maybe other council people may know where they're all at, but I don't always.
Yeah, I don't even know the historical context behind those names either, so,
that would be useful, but I personally don't know that as well as, say, Dale would, or
Right,
the people
right.
that have lived here all their life, or.
yeah,
We can get that.
okay.
Don't mean to pick on Dale, but.
Dale knows. Dale.
But beyond that, I think liability insurance, workers' comp, I have nothing to do. Clothing allowance, 400 for me is adequate. I just get dirty, the jeans and everything. The biggest thing for me is I need boots for visiting sites. I mean, I just want to be a little bit compensated for that, so. Subscription and dues, that's basically my building official Northwest Conference meeting. And I'd like to continue to go to those and/or, I guess probably the biggest one that we have listed here right now is the community improvement.
And I can indicate to you that this is the fund that we use for demolition of properties. It came over from the fire department.
Yep.
The fire department has $12,000. We just doubled it.
Okay.
Because we anticipate we'll be taking down 2 buildings, and they're anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 each, depending on what's required. And so we determined that was the appropriate place for it to be. And with buildings in their state, we're gonna have to be taking down some buildings.
For example, if people come in and ask for assistance in removing a problem house, whether it's matching or straight out funding for it, at least I have a source of funding to directly address that request. But
Is there like stipulations or guidelines for when we do provide those types of services? Because I think there's people in this town who probably own properties that would love to have you demo it versus them spending the money on it. So is there like really clear deadline or guidelines as to when?
To answer your question, there are not really clear guidelines. There are some guidelines, but they're not clear.
But in my mind, the 5,000 for a department head would be my max I'd be allowed. 10,000 for administrator, I would go to Corky for that. Beyond that, I don't have an answer for you.
No, but guidelines for the criteria.
Yeah, for the criteria of when
They're
we
not clear. They are
pay for demo versus making the homeowner pay for demo.
Not clear guidelines, no.
No clear guidelines that I'm aware of.
Seems like that might be helpful.
We can put something together.
Yes.
I can put something together.
Well, I don't know, I just feel if a house is beyond repair,
Yeah.
the homeowner probably doesn't have the funding to tear it down or to repair the property.
I agree, but I don't think that's always the situation.
You know, I don't know.
And then if a house is blighted, and we're saying it's blighted, and then a person's not willing to do the appropriate action, I mean, I just think it would be nice to have really clear, or like an explanation or guidelines as to when we get involved and when,
Up to Greg.
We basically rely on state statute and case law and publications about what's dilapidated, that's how we analyze it. Unfortunately, it's not really clear. It's guidelines that we have to make judgments on.
And I've worked with Greg before, and he's really been accurate on what is happening with a couple of houses that we are looking at, so.
Just good judgment, good common sense is all I would say. I mean,
I'm not talking about whether or not something's blighted. I'm talking about whether or not we pay for demo.
yeah.
That's what I'm referring to.
No, that's up to Greg.
I mean, I think there's pretty clear guidelines with blighted, and I'm sure you've got that under control. That's not where I was, going with that, so.
No, understood.
Yep, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So, a couple of years ago, you and I were talking about some technology that you'd like to get eventually. Can you explain to me what that was?
At that time, I was looking at trying to track and do a GIS tracking of my building permits for online. I have not been able to transfer that over. I'll just be blunt. I have done that. I think we paid a little bit for some GIS capabilities. I think Chad can address that. He's got some funding that's going to be going on, and I think in part and parcel with Public Works that they have that GIS capability.
Yeah,
Is that with the mapping, is that what we're talking
Cor-
about?
Correct. Not to jump in on you, but I have $1,000 in '24 budget for GIS initiative for building inspections.
And that
Contracted.
Those technology things underneath our IT
Okay.
person.
So that is kind of what we were talking about with like being able to pull maps or pull historical documents that are associated.
That's a document imaging system, and I can address the questions on that specifically during my budget presentation.
Okay, so is that in addition then?
It is. So what Greg is talking about is GIS application development specific to building and inspections. What we are looking at on the overall is a document imaging system that GIS can then tie into for mapping resources.
Okay.
Which would be extremely useful for my identifying and tracking permits over time. I have so many permits, it just gets too much. I just can't see and keep them all in order.
Well, it'd be
Let's put
nice
that
to
way.
have it just from a historical standpoint too, when people are trying to pull that information up.
I mean, is that the only area in your department that we're really not up to date on, per se, to maybe compared to other cities?
I'd say that is the main one, yes.
What
Tracking
is there-
where
what
the
are other
permit
ones?
and the information associated with each permit, how to retain that information, yes.
Anything else?
No, if I had that, that would be pretty powerful.
Okay,
I
but
mean, the
that's-
permitting software is awesome, it
Yeah.
does a great job. I mean, and maybe it's a little outdated, but I don't think that's an issue. I mean, as far as it works, I make it work.
So the reason for my question is maybe not this budget or something, but I'm going to try to remember to ask all departments on materials that they need as far as technology to do their job better. From time reporting, Corky and I were talking the other day about stuff like that, and just different types of technology that needs to bring our city into the next.
That's a conversation me and Chad would have to sit down and do a long discussion, I
Okay.
think. Because I get emails you wouldn't believe all the time about building software conversions, but with our software regarding billing and everything else, everything kind of interrelates.
Okay.
If we're going off our software for billing, then we don't have that ability to put it on GIS, for example, or vice versa.
If I can just jump in real quick here, one of the topics of discussion during my budget will be taking a look at not only electronic timekeeping management, which is one of the things you mentioned, Elaine, but also an upgrade to our ERP or financial software, which would include the building inspections billing module that Greg is referring to.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions? Again, my final budget is 148,209. If I got my right glasses on here. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Yep, thanks.
Greg.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Delane, I was thinking about that too, but I didn't want to throw that on the plate right now.
That's right.
Technology,
But I appreciate that.
put it on the next budget.
We have to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Chad, can I see what's wrong? Okay, so this isn't like,
That's okay.
this isn't 1/3 of all the things that were being covered. This is on a third 3 years. Okay. All right. Got it, thank you.
Ready to go, Mayor?
Waiting on Chad.
Hello, everybody. Thank
Hey,
you.
Chad.
Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, Chad.
All right, IT budget discussion. Versus getting in line by line here, and we can definitely dig into the details as council desires, but I thought I would cover this more at a 50,000-foot view level. So unless there's objections to that, I'll head in with that. The first thing we talked about was asking for an intern within the department for '24. Especially as part of the new network upgrade that we have in place, Zach and I, the technician position, have found ourselves with a lot of hands-on, day-to-day things like rewiring. One of the things we'll be asking for is another round of computer workstation replacement, which is going to require us to load up that hardware and get software installed. In addition to all of the daily fixes that Zach and I do and the GATA minutes, it would be very, very helpful in '24 for us to have an internship position that we could draw upon perhaps from the university or some other local resources to bring in and give us a hand with that. So that would be a part-time internship, and that is in the budget under salaries temporary at $18,720. So that basically breaks down to, I believe, it's $18 an hour for that position, part-time.
I would strongly encourage you to go with the university if possible.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm assuming the university has a major that covers that type,
Yeah.
that somebody would.
They do. In fact, I hold a degree from that university, and it is that degree.
I think we should try to, like Christy said, get, would it be daycare help and different things like that? I think there's a resource there that we need to try to.
Well, and I will tell you, like, I've met with the chancellor several times, and she's very vested in wanting to partner with the city in any way that she can. So I don't think it's for lack of trying. I think we just need to dig in a little bit on that.
I don't know what all the rules are, but like a job, or like a work study program or different things like that, where we can put them to work here and they get credits or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and especially because we have we have Park and Rec, and they do, Timothy, what is it? Tim was in admissions. What is it that, it's not Park and Rec, what's the major at the university?
Surf, green.
Oh, sports and rec.
It is Sports and Rec, isn't it?
Sports and
Okay.
rec, yeah.
Yeah, so they have their own degree program, and I think that we could really do something with that, but I think IT is another, not to get off track, but yeah.
No, absolutely. And we would explore all the resources available to us at the university to find out what would be a good fit for the position that we're looking to fill, and what a good
typically-
exchange would be for that.
Typically, each university has their own rules for their interns. So some universities have the supervisor write something each month on them. Some of them, it's just one survey at the end of the year that you fill out, and another one's just being like, yep, they showed up and here's their time card. I don't know what UMC's is, but they set the criteria for their interns, not us.
Yep.
For that would you be having them focusing on like network solutions or just more help desk or both?
It would be specifically network solutions, less help desk. Like I say, we've got a lot of rewiring that we need to have complete. We've got a lot of loading of workstations and software that we need to have. So it would be less, I would call it less frontline interaction with employees and more rote tasks that we would need to have performed specifically as part of workstation replacement and this network upgrade. Okay. Unless there are other questions on that, I'll keep moving along. We did a small shift. So in previous budgets, I'd had one single expense account, which was office supplies. And I did speak with Audrey. She could go into a little bit more detail on how this was created into the 24 budget. But essentially, we broke that up into office supplies, which would be general office supplies, staples, pens, pencils, binders, folders, to a small tools account as well, which is just basically another expense account. And that would be any technology purchase that I'm making that doesn't would not meet the threshold of capital equipment, so not that $5,000 threshold, a keyboard, a monitor, a screen, anything that might go wrong during the year that would need to be hardware replaced.
So you're shifting those expenses to somewhere else and under the,
Yeah, we basically just took what had been those single salary, or excuse me, this, get my topics right here, the single supply line, and we broke that up into supplies and then a small tools expense.
So then can I just ask, like, because you had it like at 12,000 and then 11,000 and then 4,000, and then you moved that budget over to small tools at 2,500. So is that pretty realistic?
Yeah, I did an estimate. I mean, we did a lot of peripheral keyboard, mouse, screen replacement this year. That's why you see me at, I believe my YTD is 8,000 for the office supplies. Yep. Yeah. So I estimated basically about a half of what I did this year in 24.
Okay, and then where would like laptops and things be?
That's in my capital equipment replacement, so that's coming up,
Okay.
that's my 0530.
Okay, so that wasn't part of office supplies? It was just
No,
like those
no,
like
no,
minor?
that's a differentiation between an expense, and Audrey can go into a little bit more detail on this, but that's differentiation between an expense account, anything that doesn't meet capital equipment threshold at $5,000, and a capital expense account, which is that 0530, which is my.
And we spent considerable time talking about that, how it would best be handled.
Yeah.
And it was really driven by accounting.
Yeah, it really comes down to capitalization and then being able to assign a depreciation schedule.
Yes. Sure.
So we buy a bulk of workstations, which I'm gonna get into how many we're gonna do here in that conversation. And then those have a depreciation schedule over an expected lifetime, so 3 years, 5 years. We'll talk about how we set that in a minute here.
And one of the things we can talk about is there is such a thing as capital bonding for this kind of thing. And since we had the hours presentation, that's another avenue for us, potentially.
Okay, I'll move into my contractual line since the majority of my 24 expenses are split between that and my subscriptions and dues. So for contractual, the one big item that fell out from last year's CIP was the broadband and facilities connection agreement with Halsted. Since we did that as a prepay at, I believe, about $150,000 for a 5-year, we ended up saving about $30,000 on that. So that does not appear going forward in 24.
And that was a negotiation that had not ever been done. And we were able to say if we pay it cash now, we made considerable savings.
So how long is that good for?
5 years.
5 years. So then is that part of your capital improvement then, is to save up for that?
So that was purchased out of reserves.
Okay, so, but going forward, we're gonna have to pay for it again in 5 years, right?
We will, yeah, and it will need to appear in the capital, in the CIP in future
Okay.
years. You're absolutely right.
Okay, because imagine you're not saving that up in 1 year.
No.
Okay.
The one thing I should add, since we're on the topic, is we did meet with Lowell Miller, our airport manager, and we would like to add that facility to that agreement. That was not part of the negotiated prepaid 5-year contract, but they did essentially give us the same annual rate for that. So I do have In my budget, I do have $3,000, that's in contractual, and that covers the monthly cost of having fiber and city network connectivity out to the airport building.
Okay, so in that 16,000, there's 3 that is targeted for the airport, under contractual.
Under contractual, that's the 3,000. I have that listed there in my permanent notes.
Hey, Jed, can you just go back real quick? The broadband, how much was it last year?
The broadband, so I don't have the
Prepaid?
numbers as to what it originally broke down to, but I know that what we paid for the 5-year prepaid contract was $150,000, and that included a number of facilities. The airport was not one of them originally.
Okay. So that would come up in 27?
This is the first year, so 5
Oh.
years from now.
Okay, 5 years from now. Okay.
So we were through 27, so you'd need to budget it for
28.
28.
Or be
Reserve.
reserving myself.
Okay. And then the 16, or the 13?
Yep.
The meeting.
Just real quick, I'm sorry, Councilmember Menard, did I answer your question?
Well, I think you did, but is the 3 in that 16?
It is.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Great,
I'm
thank
sorry,
you.
I'm going off of my permanent notes here on the budget
I
sheet.
haven't
So
even
I've got that
gotten that
broken
far.
down as airport at 3,000, and then the other 13,000 is, it's called Municode codification. And so that is basically contracted services with this, it's now Civic Plus, the same owners as our service provider as our website.
Yep.
And so what they offer is hosting for city municipal code, and then that also includes legal review of that code. So it's basically a contracted hosting and legal service.
Okay, thank you.
So what would that be used for?
So that is the hosting of our city code book.
Okay.
So that's basically breaks down to all of the city codes, all of the organizational structure, anything that's codified within the city would be contained within that material.
And has that already happened, or is that something that you're in
It
process of implementing?
you would need to talk with Ashley. Corky might have a little insight on this as to the last time there was actually a legal review done and codification that occurred, but it's been
Okay.
several
It
years.
is not current.
So, I'm just trying to clarify what this is. So basically, we would put in all of our current codes, and then it would review it.
So the first step is to be sure that all of the addendums since the last codification took place, which I think was it 2014?
I was gonna say 2012, 2013.
Yeah, it's been
It has
a
not
long
been
time.
recodified since, I'm gonna say at least 10 years.
Okay.
There's historically been a reluctance to spend the money for that, because it is expensive. No particular law firm locally would really be in that capacity. You'd have to go out and get a codifier.
So this is a program that we just put all the addendums in there from the last 10 years, and then it reviews everything?
No, so this is actual contracted legal review. So there are lawyers that would look at the addendums to the last codified version of the city code. They would check through it for the legality of it. They would come back with recommendations for any changes that would not
Substantively altered.
Thank you. I should turn to you for the legal.
charge.
No charge. But then, because it contains a hosting, it is a hosted solution where it's SaaS hosting of that code book for our constituents then to go through our website to see it. That's why this appears within the IT department's budget. So
Okay.
it's combination SaaS hosting plus legal review.
Okay, so once this is legal reviewed, it'll then be on our website for people to utilize?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
That's what I was trying to figure out, where the
IT angle
part.
comes in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you're seeing, what we've tried to do is bring all of the IT things into the IT department. In the past, each department had its own, essentially, IT budget. As we reviewed this with our finance director and with the various departments, including Chad, it just made more sense to bring all the IT things into one department. So we had coordinated effort and coordinated systems instead of system A over here, system B, and then try to link them.
So can I just go back really quick? Because one of the things that, like, I think I've mentioned a couple times is that there are things that are not up to date on the website. I'm hoping that this temporary individual also can take care of maybe doing some auditing of our different pages.
Absolutely. So I can address that specifically. So with the Munico, excuse me, with the Civic Plus solution, the idea was that it would empower individual departments to be able to easily update their own sections of the website. What we're finding, either it's and it could potentially be an issue with there not being enough training being offered as to how to use that tool. But you're absolutely right that there needs to be more effort put into keeping the individual sections of the website up to date. An intern could absolutely fill that role, go out and communicate with the individual departments as to what updates are available, and then work to keep the website updated. Now, I'm going to speak honestly for a minute here. That is a Band-Aid fix. In my experience in IT, the real maneuver there is to have a department or individuals tasked with communications and being able, more of a marketing role, to stay in touch with each one of the departments to find out what information is available, what programs are available, what word we want to get out there to our constituency, and then work the technology that we have to make that happen. Not just our website, but our YouTube channel, social media, all of those elements.
So under Carrie's budget in the future, if let's just say we did have a marketing person in we had access to a marketing person, that would be that person's job, you're thinking?
Absolutely, and Carrie and I have already had some preliminary discussions about that eventuality.
Yeah, I just think, it's such a hindrance to constituents when like something's not updated, and I think then it also like somewhat deters them from utilizing our website. And we get this new system and all these things, but you could have as many new systems as you want, and if the information's not right or not updated, then it's not worth its time.
Absolutely, you can have 2 slices of bread, but if you don't have the meat and the cheese, it's not a sandwich.
What website or what provider do we use to host the website?
Civic Plus.
Civic Plus. Is it a WYSIWYG type of site?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then we have who hosts our domains?
So our city domains, we host those through just a global provider, but all of the websites are being consolidated to the Civic Plus platform, and it's a content resource management platform, which is WYSIWYG. Okay, that was the contractual. Subscriptions and dues, yep, I'm going to talk about that. So there is a good deal of request in that line, and these are essentially licensing. This is essentially licensing for different city programs that we run, and I'll go through each of them here. There's our active.net subscription, which is estimated at $7,000 annually. That is our Park and Rec registration system. That's a SaaS-hosted platform. And I'm just going to take a quick minute because us IT people love our acronyms, right? So SaaS means software as a service. So essentially, it is a hosted cloud-based platform, if that makes sense. So active.net is one of those. We are talking with Tyler Technologies. They basically provide our ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, or financial software. It's called Encode. We would look to upgrade and shift that from the very aged, long in the tooth version that we have that we are hosting here on our servers to a SaaS, a hosted platform with a new client behind it. That estimate was $60,596. Now, one of the things that we've discussed with Audrey and we would want to discuss with all city department heads before we'd make this purchase is we really need to stick our head up, poke it around, and look at what hosted financial platforms are out there not simply make a decision to just move to the latest and greatest version of the finance software that we have. But the number that I have within the budget is the quote that we have from our current vendor for that upgrade.
Can I go back and ask real quick, the active.net, is that just for like the payment side of things?
So that's the online registration and payment portal, plus it's the point of sale platform. So if someone comes in with cash in hand and wants to register for a class, they go to Andrea. Andrea has a little USB device that's plugged into her computer, which interfaces with that software to process the payment. But also a constituent could go online through active.net and self-register and pay for a program or activity.
And that's the one that we just most recently implemented, right?
I think 2 years ago.
Okay.
Okay. The next is police related. Next two are police related. So Axon is the vendor for the body worn cameras that the officers wear. That's all of the hosting of the video from that system as well. That's at $10,900. The Axon Fleet 3 system, which is actually the in-car camera system, and that is replacing the very old system that we had before. That's no longer under support. That's at $10,800. Zoom licensing, which we presently have one single license for, and we're sharing it across all departments. We're going up to 2 there. We actually use Zoom for anytime we're bringing in someone remotely down here for city council meetings. Office 365, that's at $22,000. That is all of our office productivity, all of our email, now all of our Microsoft licenses. So one of the things we're looking at is if we need to reach a city employee via email under the Microsoft 365 licensing platform, if someone's going to have an email address, they're going to at least have one flavor of a Microsoft license. And if we're going to get to the point where we have electronic timekeeping management, which is one of the numbers proposed within this budget, we're going to need to have people be able to get feedback from that system. They're going to need an email address, and we should not expect that a city employee use a private third-party email address to be able to conduct city business. We really need to be providing them a city-provided email address for that purpose.
So do all employees not have city
They
provided?
do not. They do not.
I'm like, what's your main form of communication then?
Well, you got telephone, you got cell phones, you got written messages.
We are very out of date with that.
And that's not only a practical hindrance, that's a legal hindrance.
Well, and I understand that we have phones and emails. It's like, that's, anyways. What I'm saying though is like, if you're going to communicate with all of your employees, they should all be done, you should have like one form of communication that you say, this is our official form of communication. And with that would be email or something.
So the maneuver I'm doing with this 22,000 is to make sure that every single city of Crookston employee has a Microsoft account and therefore an email address.
Would this then also include Teams for, okay.
It does.
So question, when you say your Zoom license, do you guys normally use Zoom for outside sources or?
We have a combination of Zoom and with the Microsoft Teams licensing. We use Teams about 90% of the time.
That's what I was gonna ask, if we use Teams the most, then.
So the reason why I maintain now 2 Zoom licenses is simply logistical. So down here, when I'm bringing someone in and I'm live streaming or I'm recording, Teams has an overlay on it. Zoom does not, and lets me completely keep that out of the image.
Okay.
I mean, if we can live with the watermark, it's just logistical at $400 a year. Okay, find my place. Fuel Master. So out at the airport, there is a fuel pump and a gas tank for aviation. That system, the software that allows someone to come in and use their credit card, buy their fuel, and then settles that card out at the end of the day. That system has not been under support for at least a decade, if not longer. The last time we called to try and get support when there was an issue, we were told that because we're out of support, there'd be an hourly cost, and it was something like $300 or $400 an hour. It was outrageous. This is a system that gets used daily. This is a system that is for a department that is generating revenue for that department. We need to keep this system under support.
Is everything been billed out as it should, or is there, do you think fuel, has it been possible that fuel has been used and not been properly
I
paid?
won't speak to that. I'm not the airport manager.
Right.
But I do know that they've expressed that extreme frustration with the age of the software because of the version that they have that isn't under support. The hardware that they have out there is, I'll use a technical term, a hand-me-down. It's equipment that was 10 years old at the time it was given to them to run the software version that they have.
Which was over 10 years ago.
Which was over 10 years ago. 10 years ago, and IT is forever.
This will just allow easier access to credit card purchasers and content, and yes, it's.
So is the Fuel Master, is this cost being built into what we're charging for gas?
That's a question.
No,
for
it
how the revenue
is
is
not at this
processed.
point. We have an agreement for how much we get out of each gallon of sale. That's the basis for how we're paid.
These pilots, I don't know what the price of fuel out there now, but years ago when I was on the airport committee, these pilots, they drive, or they can pull up and see where the cheapest fuel is in the area. And Crookston was usually one of the low costs, so a lot of pilots would fuel up here. And back to using the card out there 14 years ago, they were complaining about that card. So
this is an upgrade?
This is an upgrade.
Yes.
This is an upgrade.
Well,
And I'll
well
kind of,
needed.
yeah, and I'll piggyback off of what Dale is saying here. So you heard me talk about spending $3,000 for getting the airport on our city network and on our fiber system. The idea there is so that they can run our financial software, so that they're sharing the same books that we are, so that it's all basically tied together, so that we don't have to keep doing this back and forth of trying to reconcile their revenues and our expenses, that it's all one common system.
Yeah, by paper. We do it by paper now.
Okay.
Okay. Civic Plus, that's our web hosting, as I mentioned. That's $5,000 annual licensing and hosting. Okay, here's a big one, the Sangoma lease agreement. Okay, this is the phone system maneuver that I talked about, which essentially becomes a lease of equipment. So right now we have it's called on-prem, but basically it's a box, it's a server that lives here at City Hall. And all of the phones in all of the city buildings and all of the departments, they connect over the city network back to that box. When it was purchased, which was over 10 years ago, all of the phones, the individual handsets were purchased individually. And there's basically those handsets are over 10 years old and there's no value left in them.
There's no useful life, really.
So either we do a traditional route, which what really forced our hand on this is that particular system, which is also a Sangoma system, that was end of support this year in 23. And so either we do a traditional rip and replace, which would cost well over $150,000 plus, which I've done 3 times in my professional career and is a lot of work. Or we move forward with their proposal, which was the hosted cloud-based agreement where the handsets themselves are the only hardware that we have. And it's not a straight up purchase, it's a lease of that equipment. And so after I believe it's 3 years with the handsets, then we trade them in for brand-new handset technology, and we continue moving forward.
Beautiful.
All of our phone lines. It's a lease.
So is this 40,000 something that we're paying every 3 years?
That is, yes, it's a recurring expense. It also covers what we call SIP. So basically, it's the lines themselves that we have right now. Mid-Continent hosts them. That moves up into the Sangoma cloud and is hosted as well. So that's part of that cost.
Okay, so is that another thing that you would be budgeting for the next 3 years?
Yes,
wouldn't
yes,
necessarily call
yes,
that
it should be coming
capital.
into the 3-year renewal. Yes, within the CIP.
Okay.
And I'll speak with Audrey about making sure that we include that within the CIP. Okay, let's see, Marco Managed Print Services, that's basically support services for the smaller printers that we have across the city. There's probably about, I'd say 25 at this point in various departments. Servicing a printer is different than servicing a workstation. You gotta be certified to work on HP equipment, and I am not, and my tech is not. So basically that covers everything, including the ink, the toner, all the consumables. So that's MPS. GIS licensing, I talked a little bit about that during Greg's presentation. That's specifically for building inspections, GIS development. And then that moves us into the other topic of discussion, which is the document imaging platform. So what document imaging is basically it's a repository, it's a bank for scanned images and scanned and electronic documents within the city. So the maps that are a part of the Public Works Department, the Water, the Sewer Department, Building Inspections Department, all of the ordinances, all of the resolutions, all of the fire inspections permits, anything that either began life as paper and is scanned, digitized into the system, or began life electronically as a Word document or a PDF. It can either exist as an individual file in a file system, which is not recommended because it will grow and grow and grow and be harder and harder and harder to index. It belongs in a document imaging platform. So what that system is basically a bank for all of that media, and then there is a tie into it. In the case of resolutions and ordinances, that would be a public-facing webpage that a constituent could come into and look up dog permit, for example, and it will recall all relative documents to that. Someone that wants to look up a rental certification for the fire department, that information would be recalled. The maps that Brandon talked about, those would be inside of the system. Building inspection permits would be inside of the system. Basically, for each department, there would be a front-forward-facing interface to go into that repository for the information that is specific to those departments. So that's a little long-winded, but hopefully I'm getting the point across as to what that is. Christy, you had asked me the question during last council meeting, whether or not that included, if that was an upfront cost and had recurring annual hosting fees. It's actually included 5-year support services fee at the $60,000. So that should, you're right, within someone's CIP, either mine or Brandon's, there should be a buildup again toward what those 5-year renewals will be.
Okay.
Questions
That's
on that?
5 year, you said?
5 years.
So then it's a reoccurring cost of 15 every year plus the 60,
I believe it's 15, yes.
or 15, okay.
Any questions on that one?
Is that, it says agenda too, so our agendas are gonna be put under that as well?
Agendas could potentially be one of those. So right now, they're not. Right now, those are individually hosted up on the Civic Plus website. There could be a front end developed, and there could be some efficiencies in using that platform for agenda management, but it's not specifically agenda management software.
Sure. But you said it could also host like about dog licensing or something?
I
Tell
was
me more
talking
that.
about ordinances and resolutions. I was poorly trying to
Ordinance
make
and
an
resolutions.
example. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on, Zerker licensing, that's our police record management software. So that's an annual renewal at 15,000. Muni code, I talked about that.
So you have that in
I
construction?
do have that in 2 spots.
And
You're
it's,
right.
is it different? I think it's different pricing too. You have 13 in contractual and then 16.
Yeah, let me see. So I'm going off of my permanent notes. That doesn't necessarily mean it's in the budget there twice. Let me see. 303 at 13, no, 303. Yeah, it's at the 16. And then the other place I had it was under subscriptions and dues at 0433. Okay, if I do have, so 13 is the proper quote. And if I do have it in my 0433, which I'll need to confirm with Audrey, if I do, then we will eliminate that out of the budget. Out of that line, out of the 0433.
One of those 2 numbers will be correct.
Yes, thank you.
Not both.
I believe I just had it in the permanent notes for the subscriptions and dues, and then I shifted it over to contractual and didn't drop it. But if that 16 is in there, then the 0433 for subscriptions and dues will eliminate that.
So, just for clarification, Chad, if we add up all the numbers that are in these permanent notes, they're gonna come, they'll look like your bottom line for expenses?
Yeah, keep in mind that so this is a limitation of the financial software that we have. So those permanent notes may have included, I tried to go through and eliminate any former references that I'd had in there from previous budget years, but they don't. So when I do the entry into the proposed budget, I'm running off of an Excel spreadsheet that I've got that's separate from the permanent notes. Again, it's a limitation of the financial
So
software.
just above the Zurcher licensing is document imaging agenda moved to public works, so that is not included in that
Correct.
total 278?
Correct, that's
Okay.
about 60,000
Yep.
something and change
Yep.
that Brandon represented within his budget, proposed budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then the final one is electronic timekeeping management, so ETM. We've talked a little bit about the city's need for that. That's basically time cards, that's basically workflows to support an employee requesting time off, how shifts are scheduled across departments. Right now, that's still in 2020, going into 2024, an entirely paper process for the city of Crookston.
And just so you understand, Chad, and I think early on this year, I told Chad, this is something we gotta get it.
Yeah,
in the budget.
I mean, doing it the way it's being done now is a little bit crazy.
So let's just say we have a discussion about joining a payroll service. This software would just communicate with whatever payroll service we had, and it would distinguish what union requirements are, what distinct contracts with different entities, and
So part of implementation of an electronic timekeeping management system includes discovery of what individual requirements such as labor unit negotiations, rate, shift differentials in public safety departments is one example. There's a lot of discovery that's necessary. That would be part of this expense. To the other part of your question, would it interface with a payroll service? Basically, depending upon the system that you choose, this 85,000, just for full disclosure, is based on a quote from the same software vendor that we use for Encode, which is our financial software. It's a product called ExecuTime. It's one I'm familiar with, but I'm not necessarily recommending that that's the one that we go with. I had to start with a budget number.
Yep.
And we really need to flesh out what the quotes would be from various timekeeping systems.
So when you're reaching out to different companies, are you checking with other cities to see what they're using and how it works for them?
Yes.
So, like in Chaska, is that the one that you said you're most familiar with?
ExecuTime, which is, so in Chaska, Tyler Technologies, which is the parent company of the Encode financial software that we use. We used another product from Tyler Technologies in Chaska called Munis. It's just basically a brother to Encode, but it's a much newer platform. Electronic timekeeping management from Tyler Technologies at that time was a product called ExecuTime that they had acquired and were merging it into their product line. So $85,000 is a placeholder within this budget that would roughly be what our cost would be to implement ExecuTime across Crookston. But we definitely should explore what electronic timekeeping management platforms are out there and what might be the best fit for us.
So how would you envision that an employee putting their time in? Do they have hand, or they have to log into an account, or they
Yeah, I
can do it
can
anywhere?
speak for how ExecuTime, which is what this number represents. It's an app. It's an app that they run. So, for example, when I ran ExecuTime there in Chaska, if I was going to take a sick day, we had personal leave, so it was PPL there. But if I was going to take time off, I would pull out my smartphone. I would open up the ExecuTime app. I would log in, username, password. I would request a day off, time off, and then there's a workflow in place in that system, which then forwards that request over to my supervisor, who's the administrative services director. He would just approve, and then basically that would build that in. I'd had that time off. It would appear within my timesheet. At the end of the week, when it came time for me to approve my time card, all of that was laid out within the app. I would just look it over and confirm, yep, I took that day off. All of this looks correct. The rest of the hours based on my salary was calculated, and I hit approve. It moved on to in the workflow to my supervisor to approve, and then it made its way to payroll to process. It incorporated into the financial software, and checks were cut, and time was reconciled, and that's how it worked.
I was gonna say, somebody that uses something similar and used to use a very archaic way, it used to me when I would try to approve everyone's time roll, it would take me a couple hours, and like, I had to do it today, and it took me 6 minutes using an electronic time card.
And one of the things we have to think about is, are we gonna continue to do payroll like we are, or are we gonna talk about outsourcing?
Well, the thing that's not mentioned is, once you get this up and running, the payroll hours that we're saving. You know, I mean, right now, Corky, how long does it take?
We block off 3 days. Well, for our human resources person, it could be up to 3 days, but the process, it takes hours because the employee fills out a piece of paper, categorizes it, signs it, brings it to his or her supervisor, they review it, goes to Vance in accounts, he looks it over, looks good, he brings it to Jordan, Jordan brings it back to Vance after he thinks he's entered it.
You got no less than 4 employees touching it.
And they're touching it a minimum of 10 minutes.
So, the savings that we would get is.
And it would free up your human resources person.
To do human resource
work.
This is a long time.
And I'm assuming then, like, it saves on, like, it calculates the holiday pay and the OT and all of that, or
automatically.
Well, and I think that's a big part of it too, right? Because you have like 3 different or 4 different groups that have different stipulations to their contracts and how they accrue.
In the labor
and
units, yes.
all that, yeah.
Yes.
So my one thing is, I just want to make sure, I work for a SAS, so like, a lot of times the questions maybe aren't always asked, and there's assumptions made about how the software works. So do you go and talk with the people who are currently utilizing this software and like what they feel limitations are and what we should be aware of and?
This particular ExecuTime proposal, I did open up an opportunity 2 years ago to have our then, it was Kathy's assistant. She was accountant. Our accountant, our HR manager, and I don't believe we brought our finance director on by then, or he was just onboarding. But I did open up a Q&A and an opportunity for our staff to talk with Chaska staff about exactly how that solution worked and how much work was involved with an implementation of it so that they got a feel for. And we had a whole line of questions that Crookston generated that we sent for them to answer, and they did back to us. So we did some exploration of that two years ago. Yes.
And has there been any major feature updates or anything that's of
I wouldn't
consequence?
expect major feature updates. There's likely been some improvements with it, but we've not touched base with Chaska in at least 2 years.
And there hasn't been any major drawbacks that you guys are aware of?
So what was mentioned during that discussion was that during the discovery that I talked about, there was a lot of time and effort put into making sure that it was understood what all those different rate differentials were, what those holiday pays were. They made it clear, and they told us, make no mistake, there is work that goes into developing the front end of this system.
To build it out?
Yes.
Gotta load it up.
To load it up, because it's garbage in, garbage out, right? You have to make sure that you're feeding it correctly. Once that work was complete, then the efficiencies came from there.
And there was no concern with when you're building that there's any deficiencies in which they couldn't calculate something?
No, in fact, I remember specifically, since I was involved in part in the implementation there in Chaska, that one of the things they looked very closely at was our public safety departments and how shifts worked there. And the system, to my memory, was very adaptable, flexible, and we were able to come up with something that fit how our pay codes and our rates worked. It adapted to us, we didn't adapt to it.
And again.
And that happens, and that's why I asked those questions.
Exactly,
Because it's like
that's-
you think you're saving yourself time, but then you're having to go back and do something because it's
I kind of put two and two together.
yeah,
there
a
on your
limitation
question.
of that, so,
Yeah.
all right.
And Chad and I, again, this is a must. We gotta get this.
This is a must 5 years ago.
Unfortunately,
5?
yeah.
Too late.
Longer than that, probably.
So, we've been talking about it since the beginning of the year.
And then finally, nearing the end here, what is my 053 or my capital equipment? So 2 years ago, I came before you in a budget discussion and I talked about an equipment replacement schedule. It was aggressive, but not overly so, and that was to replace, which was at the time 42 workstations across the city. And we were going to try to do that in thirds, so we would do 1/3 of it in 21, 1/3 of it in 22, or excuse me, 1/3 of it in 22, 1/3 of it in 23, 1/3 of it in 24. And then we would keep that cycle going, so once every 3 years, a workstation would be replaced. Now, it's the industry standard in IT for your workstation replacement is 3 to 5 years. The further you push it out, the less efficient that desktop is going to be or that laptop is going to be. We are dealing with equipment now, so we did 1/3 replacement, so we did effectively about 13 workstations in that first year in 22. We are dealing with equipment that is 10 to 11 years old in departments. So we still have 2/3 of them to replace, and we've added workstations since 22. In an effort to try and cut back on our overall general levy increase, I eliminated year 2 of 3. So I pushed it out a year. Audrey Corky and I talked about being less aggressive going forward, but at least replacing once every year. And what we talked about doing was pushing into a 5-year equipment replacement schedule. So that gives us a little more of a cushion, less of an upfront expense, but we'd still try to do it 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, if that makes sense. Now Christie at the beginning of the Ways and Means here caught a typo, an error in the CIP plan that you see in front of you. But the idea there is that we would complete second replacement, second wave replacement, so another 13, 14 machines in 24. We do the remaining machines in 25. Then we would skip a year and we'd begin year 5 again, because remember the first wave was in 22. We'd start again. So basically we skip a year and then we start our 1/3, 2/3, 3/3 schedule again. So I've got budgeted then 24,000 in 24 for 15 machines, and that's at $1,600 each, because it's not just it's not just the computer, right? It's the monitor, it's the keyboard, it's the mouse, it's the whole package.
So how often do you take bids on your equipment? I mean, there's many different laptops, and
Yep.
I mean, is there a
Vendors.
particular company you go through, or?
So with year 1 in 22, one of the things that I tried to target was a mobile user, a department head, someone that's moving around, that basically had a desktop in the past sitting on their desk, but would be more efficient if they could bring it with them. That was the Microsoft tablet, or Surface Pro, which is basically tablet, workstation, or laptop, depending upon the configuration. Going forward, we have had some success in what's called a NUC, or an NUC. So it's a small, tiny little form factor PC with a up-to-date processor in it, but basically it bolts to the back of a monitor, right? We put one of those in for Lynn Ressel, who is our water sewer clerk. Is that her position? Yeah. So she's taken frontline payments. We looked at a point of sale terminal we built using that platform for the pool for Michaela. That was a very effective machine, and it cost about $700 for that. That's getting very price competitive in looking at what the big vendors like a Dell or an HP machine would be to buy off the market, even at state contract
So
pricing.
like when you go buy them, like what companies do you go through to get them? Just do it like.
So
go to
generally
Best
state
Buy, or-
contract. So as a cooperating purchasing venture through the state of Minnesota, we qualify for IT purchasing under the Minnesota state contract, which is basically pre-bid through certain vendors. So it's either Software House International or it's CDWG are those vendors that hold a state contract.
Okay.
And HP is one of them. I don't think they do Dell, but they also happen to resell the Microsoft product as well, so that's where.
Is there
Surface
something
came
that you
from.
do with the old equipment?
Right now, 10 to 11 years, it has very little residual value.
Is there anything that can be done to proactively get rid of it sooner and has some value to it maybe, or?
So you're asking me if exploring a lease would be a more effective with cost return on it. If we stuck to a 3-year replacement schedule, which is more aggressive than what I'm proposing, pushing it out to 5 years, maybe. But remember that, or I should say not remember, keep in mind that with IT equipment, its depreciation schedule is fast, right?
Right.
So within a year, you've lost at least a quarter, if not a half, of the value. of
But
that.
getting to the place where you're not operating on 10-year-old machines, or,
Right.
you know, maybe something like that. I mean, granted, it depreciates fast, but, you know, maybe we can turn them in and get some value and then get something back from any vendor. Is there something like that out there? And
I can
bring some numbers to the table? And
Yeah, I can explore that. I mean, it's possible through some of our vendors like Marco or others that there would be a lease program available. I can definitely look into that, and if it is, I
Only
would do cost
because,
comparisons.
like you said, if this computer stuff, you know, it goes out of date so fast. And if we're on a regular rotation on turning in decent stuff, but it's not archaic,
Right.
you know, and somebody else could get some use out of it down the road, it'd be nice to see.
Yeah,
Probably.
it most likely would be an aggressive rotation, so I would say a year, 2 years, before all of the value would completely depreciate from it, but I can definitely look into it.
Very good.
So under the IT, you qualify for the state.
Yeah, so that's through CPV or Cooperative Purchasing Venture, so we can purchase on the state of Minnesota contract for IT.
So that doesn't exist in any other type of equipment other than IT for us?
You mean like a snow plow?
Yeah,
I think he's referring to Brandon and the whole state
yeah.
Yeah, that was
purchasing
a
power.
question to you, Emmy.
Yeah, the state contract system does apply to other things. I can't give you the whole Sears Roebuck catalog, but there are many, many, many items that have been pre-bid. And so if you.
Well,
go to
that's
the
so,
state contract-
when we're talking about that, when Brandon was here, he specifically said, well, we'll go to Ziegler, and it is what it is. Well, if you're going under the state program, maybe it's,
And again, I can't speak to specific items, whether there's a Caterpillar or whether there's a box of pens.
Yeah.
But you can always look.
We've looked at state bids when purchasing larger equipment, or I think even police cars, right?
Yeah, we use the contract bid price, and we ask our local agencies to get close to
Right.
that, and they generally come in very close to that number, so we spend our money locally versus
Exactly.
Yep.
using the state contract.
Yep.
As a negotiating tool.
Yes.
That's like one of two bids that we received, right? And you can buy many things on that Minnesota property purchase, like Nathan said. And if you look at our purchasing agreement, it says within 5% of the state bid will buy local. And every time for us, at least squad cars, they've always been within and usually under that 5% difference. So in my 11 or 12 years of administration, we've always bought local. But we do base it off that Minnesota state price. And if they
but under
were
that Minnesota state
substantially
price,
higher,
is,
we would buy.
I'm sorry, under that Minnesota state price, is that a leasing price?
No, that's a
No,
purchase.
it's a purchase, it's purchased specifically.
It's an outright purchase price, yes.
And they've done all the work for us. They've solicited bids, categorized them, and they said, there's your best price. And if you go with that, then you've met the statutory requirements for the bidding
Yeah,
process.
yeah, it's a good purchasing vehicle, because if you do go with that, as Corky said, it's pre-bid, so you don't require multiple quotes on certain thresholds for pricing. But oftentimes, as also was discussed and what Darren alluded to there, in an effort to buy locally, you can often use what that pre-bid price is in negotiations with another vendor to get a better, get a better offer. Mhm.
So Chad, for going forward on your capital improvement plan, we'll see the $60K for the imaging document for 5 years, right?
Yes,
And then
built
the
in.
broadband 5-year contract for
Yes,
the 150. And
absolutely.
then the phones will have a
40.
some portion of that over a 3-year as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you for keeping me honest on that. So just lastly, we've got 7,212 in for a new GTAC. That's basically a mobile data terminal for one of the police cars, for a new police car. So that's some specialized equipment. It's got a little higher price point to it. And
And
then,
how often do we have to replace those?
Darren, you want to kick in on that?
Our squad car computers are on about a 5-year.
Okay.
And then we also are purchasing 2 PCs for the airport. So because they're gonna be on our city network, they're gonna run our city finance software, they're gonna use the new Fuel Master software. They need better than a 10 to 15-year-old computer to do that.
And Lowell at the airport, very much on board. Just ties us right into him and us.
Good. Good job.
Thank you. Any final questions?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Say, Chad,
Yes, sir.
did you, get that email I sent you on that broadband thing? They got one out in college here coming up. Yeah. Just FYI.
No, I appreciate that, because I read it.
So, yeah, it's just FYI that if they're local and it's, so,
This is our real job.
FYI anyway. Thank you.
That's when I first got on.
Well, this ain't good when we got the lieutenant and chief at the same table.
Say what?
Not good when we got the lieutenant and the chief at the same table.
Deputy chief, now remember.
Deputy chief,
Yeah.
excuse me.
And then the mayor insults him.
No, that's just,
Excuse me.
Oh. Yeah, they only have to keep track of one book.
That's right, yeah.
Looks like we got a couple apps in here, we'll give it a couple minutes. Police,
all right, thank you.
thank you.
Mine won't be near as techy as Chad's is, so I don't have I have some acronyms, but not the cool acronyms like he does. So I guess just to start out, I know we're always interested in revenue, so I'll go through the revenues. We'll go through the expenditures and then close out with the CIP. Kind of like Chad said, I'll just kind of hit it from the 10,000-foot view. If you have any questions about anything, if I do bypass a certain line item, please ask. The expenditures that I'll go over were ones where, we had a significant or moderate increase, and I'll just kind of explain that to you, why that increase is there. So if we're starting at revenues, and I'll just go over, I'll detail these by the last 4 digits of the accounting codes. So 2240 dog and cat license. Our estimate revenue for that for '24 is $750. And just like that sounds, that's revenue that we receive for animal impound fees and license tag fees, the license fees throughout the city of Crookston. 2270 special vehicle permit. If you remember, I believe in 22, maybe in the first part, end of 21 and the first part of 22, we enacted the UTV permit, the side-by-sides. So we have since then issued permits per, that's the income for that, $400 per year approximately to date. And those are slowly increasing, but it's still a very new ordinance.
So that's for golf carts too?
No, that is not golf carts.
Oh, okay.
Reason why we do the UTVs is there's a checklist to make sure that they have certain equipment, turn signals, brake lights, etc. So we actually inspect the UTVs and issue the license at the police department. The golf cart are actually taken care of by Ashley out of her office.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Can I ask why there's a zero budget then for that?
I'm sorry, for special vehicle permit?
Yeah.
If you look at proposed budget, it's $400.
Yeah, but it says current budget is zero.
I'm sorry. So when we came in, if you remember, for 2023, we didn't know how to judge that, I guess. So that might have been an oversight, but it was just estimated that $400 was coming in for those. Again, that was new. I can't remember if it was end of it was at the beginning of 2022. So.
So you just didn't know what to budget?
For that one in 23, I'd have to look at my notes, but I don't believe that we budgeted anything for that because it was new.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have the answer for that there. In intergovernmental revenue, 3184, the federal grants, typically right now, the money received for that is called a Patrick Leary Bulletproof Vest Program. Through the federal government, we get up to 50% reimbursement on bulletproof vests that we purchase. Anticipated for '24. As years past, we receive about $2,500 for that.
And we didn't budget for that either.
We did. I don't know why the numbers aren't put in there. For '23, they are. No, they're not for '23.
No. So you typically you get $2,500 per month or per year?
Per year for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I honestly, they should be in there for '23 and they're not. 3-4, where are we at here, sorry? 3418, police training reimbursement. So the state of Minnesota, through the Post Board Police Officer Standard and Training, they do partial reimbursement for training costs, post-mandated training costs, which typically is about $1,000 per officer is a good average. So we typically receive about $15,000 a year for that is our anticipation in 2024. And if you look at that, so I think under the current budget, it is in there, Christie, I'm sorry. If you go year-to-date actual, those are zeros because we haven't received some of those funds. But if you look at the current budget and the line item over, it does show police training reimbursement, 14,000, state grants. You can see them in there. I think you might.
I was talking about the one above it that said 0.
The federal, the 3181.
Yeah.
That one isn't over, so that one isn't in there, you are correct, but,
Yeah.
and I think part of the zero on that might be, honestly, we just did some of that reimbursement, we haven't received that. That's just a number we overlooked. Okay, 3422, state grants, typically, that's called a police aid grant, a PA1 grant. That's monies we receive from the state to help subsidize pension costs for the PERA and the police officers. Typically we receive about $135,000 or more from the state on that.
And the reason was that 100 was we weren't fully staffed at the time we did the budget previously.
Sure.
Yeah, that's dependent on number of staff at the time that we apply for the
When
grant.
does those funds come in, and when do you see those funds come in, so it's under that actual column?
Do I see the funds
No,
come in?
when do they typically hit?
So on that one there, we typically, we submit it, it's due by March 15th of every year, and it's paid by October 1st of each year. 3630, school resource officer. So again, for '24, the school district pays for 50% of an SRO salary, which includes fringe benefits. For '24, it's about $52,000 that we'll be receiving for that. You can see we've had some now. I do believe they make that over 2 payments.
They do. They pay it twice a year.
Twice a year for that. Charges for service, 4201, special police services. So that typically, the funds we receive from that are from mental health transports. We receive reimbursement on that from the county. And again, on average, we receive about $4,000. We're anticipating that for '24. And that's a moving target. That all depends on how many transports we do each year. But if you take 5-year averages, 4,000 is a pretty safe number to use, is what we should generate for
That
the
school
revenue on that.
resource officer, is that a predetermined amount set by the state?
No, that's per contract. So our SRO contract, which is, it's valid through 2024.
Between us and the school?
Correct. We would be negotiating a new contract for 2025 and moving forward. Typically, it's a 3-year contract.
So, I'm sorry, not to cut you off. They pay 50% of the person's salary, or so if that makes the city whole on the person's salary, with half of it coming doing city stuff, and the other half we're not
We're not going backwards.
We're not going
Right.
backwards, is what I'm asking.
Yep, and how the contract reads is that each year, the amount is based off of the current union contract.
Okay.
So it's not an estimate, like, it's actually $52,200 and change this year. For the estimate here on revenue, we just put 52,000, but we'll, if you want to say, bill the city the specific exact amount, which actually, I can tell you, what was that number again? I'm
And
sorry.
they're actually really good, they actually charge you They
It's-
know what it is.
It's $52,230 that we would bill exactly
Okay.
this year.
Thank you.
Sorry, 4201, that's mental health transports, again, anticipating we receive about $4,000 for that. 4206, animal control and shelter, that's monies we receive for people paying to get their animals out of the impound. I might have said on the first line that was impound fees also, that's just dog and cat license on the very, very first one. This line item is for any fees that we receive to get their animal out of the pound, and typically receive about $2,000 a year for that. 4302, fines parking violations, again, just like that sounds, is for any city ordinance violation for parking. I receive about $500 a year for that. Line items 4305, 4951, and 4955. So wrecker fee, fund, refunds and reimbursements, copier charges are all estimated at 0. Fines and forfeitures, 5101, court and traffic fines, again, that's money received from the state, that's our portion of any citations that are issued. And again, typically we receive about $40,000 a year from that. Police forfeiture is 5201. Reason why we budget that as 0, as you'll see in some years past, there's been money there. That's if, in a circumstance, we do it very rarely, but if we obtain a vehicle that's forfeited and there's a bank lien on that vehicle, we may sell that vehicle for the bank just to help them out, because a lot of times these vehicles are financed through like California or Texas or something like that, where it's difficult for them to come and repossess that vehicle, so we will help them occasionally selling vehicles, so it looks like it's a revenue, but technically it's not. We would issue that money back to the lien holder. That's why it's always at a 0 balance. 622 rent storage units. We don't rent anything out. Showed some revenue in 22, but that wasn't for anything that we really had. 6230 donations. Again, that's budgeted at 0. That's if we receive any money from the public or businesses for a donation to the police department. Last one we did receive was in 2021 from Walmart for $4,500. Night to Unite, same thing. Any donations that we would receive from the public is funded in that line item. Again, that's why we budget that at 0. Police forfeited vehicle, 6243. That's the same thing there. Anytime we sell vehicles and obtain that revenue, that's where it shows in that line item. That money is then transferred into a vehicle forfeiture account. Again, that's a moving target. All depends on how many vehicles we sell each year. So obviously we budget that at 0.
Can I go back really quick? For the UMC parking violations, we
Yeah.
don't
We don't do that. So years and years ago, and I've been with the police for almost 20 years, prior to that, the UMC used to hire police reserves and off-duty police officers to do security out there, and we would issue parking violations at that time. We haven't used that line item in like 20 years. My understanding is one of the reasons why we can't omit that or delete it is because it does show a history of money or revenue coming in at some point.
And then the wrecker fee, we had
So wrecker fee is there. Again, the reason why we have that is 0. So, we're towing vehicles less and less just because the state law changes and different things. However, if we do tow a vehicle and we recover that cost from an owner, that's where that money would show in as revenue that way.
Okay. So it's like we're $3 to the negative in it right now, year to date?
Can you tell me what line item that is
I'm
again?
sorry, it's 4305 under charges for services.
It does seem like that, and I would have to give you a reason why that is. $3 a negative, yes.
I'm assuming that there's probably things that have been processed.
There's something there, yeah. So, in total, generally, we receive about $250,000 in revenue at the police department through different, mostly state monies and different things. Any other questions on that before I move forward to expenditures? The first one I'll talk about is salaries 0101. Salaries are increasing by about $106,858. Again, those are all pre-negotiated by union contracts. LELS 4% increase for 24. AFSCME is 2%. We have 20 full-time employees at the police department. So approximately $58,435 is an increase per union contracts, and then there's an additional $46,423 increase, and that's by base rate step increases. So officers moving up the pay scale, that's the increase you'll see there. Again, for a total of $106,858. Next one, salary overtime. We're suggesting an increase of $13,350 from $61,500 to $75,000. Overtime is also, it's a moving target. It fluctuates depending on the staffing levels. So typically in the past, when overtime is extremely high and we've been short-staffed, the salary line item is low, so it kind of offsets overtime. Currently being full-staffed, we have gone over on or being short-staffed, we've gone over on overtime. Being full-staffed, it's unlikely that we would go over on our overtime. The 5-year budgeted amount, which has been budgeted for the last 5 years, is $60,600. The 5-year actual that we've paid out is $78,700, and if you notice, last year was $114,000 that we paid out. So just kind of auditing what we use overtime for, which is, you know, driving school to outreach, post-mandated training, shift coverage, transports, you know, other shifts that we work that are mandated or ones that are just kind of built into the system. And often, like other departments, when we do our training, you know, we have a required amount through post, which increases all the time. Typically, the officers are generally on overtime. It's difficult for officers to train while they're on duty or regular shift, as they're subject for call-out. So it's suggested that we increase that to $75,000. If we look at kind of like the earmarked money that it would take just for shift coverage, training, et cetera, it's close to $60,000 that number would come to. That leaves us just about $17,000 for all the other incidental, when we have to cover shifts, stay late for reports,
So you weren't
late
fully staffed
investigations.
yet in 2021 yet, were you?
No, we were not. This is the first year that we've been staffed
So
in probably about
I
a year
was
and a half.
expecting to see the overtime to go down a lot more than what you're budgeting.
Is any of that related to court too?
Yeah, so no, court time would come out of that line item, yes. So, you know, we still anticipate, Delaney, you know, versus $115,000 as last year, that, you know, we're reducing that by almost half. There's just built-in overtime that there's very difficult to control. Like I said, about 60,000 of that is just from training, you know, outreach programs through the city, like Night to Unite, Ox Cart, Halloween Party, Safety Town, shift differential overtime. You know, when you get the shift differential pay of approximately $1.50 per hour for all your night officers. You know, some of this is reimbursed, so it is deceiving on that number. So like when we work TZD shifts, so towards zero death, you know, like safe and sober used to call it, mental health transports, you know, those are reimbursed through funds. You know, we get reimbursed with mental health transports through the county. TZD is a state program. You know, we have office.
Does those reimbursements come in then and through revenue?
Excuse me? They are reflected in revenue, but so that would by rights offset some of that. You know, it doesn't show it in this line item, but
Okay.
you know, if we like, so you can see like right now we have 63,000 we've used in overtime year to date. That number might actually be, and this is completely guess, so don't hold me to it. It might actually be like 55,000 or 50,000 true to the budget, if that makes sense.
But when you do transports, medical transports, at one point, when I was in it, it was, the county would do that. So you're being reimbursed by the county
Correct.
for your transport.
It's through social services. Correct.
Okay,
is that-
give me an example of something that we would be reimbursed for, and where would it show up on the revenue line?
Okay, so we'll go back to, so like I said before, what number is that? Okay, so 3418, one example right there, Delane, if you go back, police training reimbursement. So you know, a lot of our costs in training, and like I said, we're mandated by the state on a certain amount of training we have. We get about $15,000 back from the state for training, so that would help offset that cost. You know, currently right now, if you remember, we're part of the Special Operations Group out of Grand Forks, which includes bomb, SWAT, the drone program and search and water rescue. We do have some officers right now that are working what's called a Stone Garden program. So the federal government, the Border Patrol hires the UAS, Unmanned Aerial Services, to do border patrol. All of that is reimbursed federal dollars. That's a new program. You know, mental health transports, that's line item 4201. We anticipated that at $4,000 that we get back from the state on that.
I see. So it's not listed in 4951, refunds and reimbursements. It's listed under special police services.
It all depends on what the revenue stream is, like
Okay.
whether it's a federal or state monies that we receive for that.
Or county money.
Is it, I mean, can it be put under that, like what Tim said, refunds and reimbursements, so it'd be, is that on?
That's actually an accounting question.
Yeah.
And it's how you interpret or characterize. And that, I gotta tell you, Dwayne, that's always an issue. I mean, it's not a bad issue, but what one person might call reimbursements, another one might call something else.
You know, and that's, I think, also, if you look at this under the subheading, charges for service, so we're not technically charging, you know, like the federal government or Polk County Social Services for that service. That's the intergovernmental revenue. We are submitting for reimbursement on that. So as long as there's monies available, we would get reimbursed for that.
I just, it'd be nice to know, when we looked under a category, what those reimbursements came from, and instead of doing a bunch of, I guess, digging and taking hours or whatever, but just a question.
I wish that when we receive those funds, we could directly put it back into that line item. It just unfortunately doesn't work that way. I mean, we could do a better breakdown, Delane, on the next time that we present, to try to say that, you know, overtime is X, but we get reimbursement for this, so the technical cost to the city, you know, is Z or something like that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Line item 0122 to 0133, those are all salary or fringe-related pay items, and they're reflected again by number of staff and union COLA contra increases, such as FICA, Medicare, PERA, health insurance, etc. Moving forward to 0206, investigation supplies. We're suggesting a $2,000 increase on that one, from $5,500 to $7,500. The investigation supplies is quite high this year. However, in the past, all testing for new officers has been paid from that line item. When I mean new testing is when we look at hiring someone, doing the medical, physical, agility, physical exam, medical exam, written test, lab results, etc., have come out of that line item. As we move forward, you'll see that I move those to professional fees, because just as an example, this year we had budgeted $5,500 for investigations for 2023, and about 5,000 of that out of 23 was used for new officer hiring. So it didn't leave a lot left over for investigation supplies. So what we did is we moved that to professional fees, I'll talk about a little bit later. So when we talk about investigation supplies, you know, that's for replacing filters for certain evidence processing machines that we have in the police department, drug testing kits, on-site urine analysis kits, evidence packing supplies, investigation supplies, you know, evidence supplies, disposal of narcotics, and any other case-related expenses. So typically, kind of like your fee to keep the doors open, if you say, or kind of your earmark is about $6,500 a year. That's what we need earmarked just to keep the shelves stocked, if you will. So by suggesting $7,500, that leaves approximately $1,000 for replacing batteries or broken equipment or something like that.
So you guys bumped up the proposed budget and then also moved it?
No, so the professional fees, what we did is when we're talking about the new hire testing, we're suggesting $2,500 was added to professional fees,
Okay.
but it was completely removed from investigations. So We, in the past, had budgeted 5,500, we're asking to move to 7,500, that would only include investigation supplies.
Okay, so there's still a need for that on
Cor-
top
the-
of.
Correct, the new hire testing is also a need, and that's in professional
Okay,
fees.
Just, this popped into my head. So we've got this opiate council where the county is receiving funds for.
I'm actually on
that.
the board.
Does the city anticipate getting funds from that? And if so, would we reflect that in a budget?
I'm actually on that board, and those monies that the county's receiving through that lawsuit that you're talking about, I believe that's more for community awareness, community support, community rehab, et cetera, services like that.
Okay.
I don't believe it would ever be reflected through the city, like they would give monies to a city or county municipality for that.
I actually attended one of those sessions where that was an issue. There were a couple of cities there saying, are we gonna get money? And they said it might be for education, it might
Right,
be for
awareness.
outreach, but it's not gonna be directly for law enforcement functions.
Okay, thank you.
The next line item, I'll talk about 0303, a little bit further down, contractual. So the suggestion is to increase it $3,000 from $7,000 to $10,000. Main need for that is, we recently learned that our current taser that we're using through Axon, is out of service, or will not be supported at the end of this year. They will still sell cartridges for that model, but if any defects or anything were to occur to that model, we would have to purchase a new one. Our current tasers, the ones we've had them for between 10 and 14 years, depending on the model. We've been using about the same kind. A new taser plan, what we'd be looking at doing would cost $15,657 annually. That's based on a 5-year payment. It would be a complete warranty, which would include batteries and taser cartridges. Currently, we are budgeting about $2,500 a year for cartridges and batteries. So if we moved forward with this, we could reduce that amount. Actually, cartridges and batteries are costing us about $2,800 annually. So what we're suggesting by moving that to $7,000 to $10,000 is I currently have reserves that's earmarked for tasers. We have been slowly putting a few $1,000s away each year for this. We currently have $10,284 in a taser reserve. So for year one, we would use that money plus the additional $3,000 that we're talking about to get us to $12,857, and then reduce the $2,800 that we're currently paying on our taser cartridges to match the year one of $15,657. So then moving forward, for the next 4 years, we would have to look at budgeting an additional funds to match that $15,657. I didn't put that in as a CIP purchase because it would be a reoccurring expense. After 5 years, we would just likely have to enter into a different contract for either the same or a different taser. And then the additional funds that would be left over in that account are used for contractual items such as our copy machine at the police department and our BCA network access. So we pay, it's gonna be annually, right now it's quarterly fees just to access the BCA network. On that BCA network, we use that for running driver's license, crim histories, et cetera. All police services run through that network.
so when we talk about Chad's budget being all the IT stuff, is that considered IT?
It wouldn't, this would be a non-lethal force weapon that we would, carry on our person, which we already carry. So it really wouldn't be any IT services related to that. It would be.
I was referring to like the printer stuff that he
So
had mentioned
currently,
in his
right
budget.
now, the printers, he mentioned like the desk printers, I think is what Chad was talking about, the copy machines. The large copiers, each department pays their respective fee for that.
Okay.
Okay, next one I'll touch on is 0312, professional fees. So this is the one, Christie, we were talking about, moving approximately $2,500 over to this line item, and that would include costs for new hires, you know, again, which would include the medical, psychological, physical agility, written tests, and et cetera. So we would increase that to 3,500 to cover that. And we're just anticipating, hopefully this isn't true, but you know, if looking at years past, we're hiring about 1.5 to 2 officers a year. So we would budget amount there just to kind of cover 2 new hires each year.
Can I just go back? So the BAC network, that's not an actual like,
BCA network.
yeah.
So at the police department, we actually have 2 networks that we run off of. So we have like the, are we Midco, Chad? I apologize.
No, Halstead now.
Halstead, and so we have our fiber optic that we run, you know, like Google and everything else through, and then we have, Chad can probably explain this better, but then we have the BCA network, which is a secure network that strictly runs. So like we talk to the state computers to like, if you get pulled over by a police officer, we run your driver's license, we can run your criminal history, you know, we can enter things that are stolen, we get teletypes multiple a day saying, hey, this person's missing, look for the stolen vehicle.
Sure.
We can also enter that into NCIC, et cetera. So all the federal and state data that we receive, there is access fees for that. It's actually quite expensive.
Yeah, the Minnesota.
So that's not considered an IT. That's,
Yeah.
I'm just really confused because you're paying for all the contracts, but then you're not paying for the contracts, so I'm just trying to figure out.
Right, yeah, so the state network, criminal justice data network that is made available through the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is a law enforcement agency network and is specific to the police department.
Okay.
So that's kind of what also sparked like how when we did replace the city servers where we decided to move them all to the police department. So we're bound by state and federal regulations. That's, you know, who can access our building.
Right.
We have to, the server that runs that CJD network that Chad said has to live at the police department. So it just made sense to move everything over there in a climate control secure environment.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, 0331 would be the next one I was just gonna touch on, travel training expense. They're suggesting an increase of $2,200 from $12,800 to $15,000. You know, over time, prior administration, whatnot, this number has slowly decreased. And for some obvious reasons, during COVID, you know, most or all of the training was virtual, which was kind of nice because your tuition fees are usually about 1/3 of the cost of the training to send someone down the road. Your hotel and per diem can also get very expensive. So again, just looking at current staffing levels and what it's cost us in the past, you know, we're anticipating that we would spend all of that $15,000 on training. In fact, if we went by the numbers, we probably would spend more, but we would just have to be selective on what trainings officers are or aren't going to. Okay, if you don't, unless you have any other questions on some of those expenditures, I'll be honest, most of mine stayed the same or actually decreased on some of them. I mean, going through, obviously, we did have some increases, but we also decreased a lot of the line items by about $22,000. And the other remaining amounts, which I would just talk about, are the capital improvements.
Can I just ask?
Question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Chris.
For 0438, you have nothing budgeted, but you have a year-to-date right now of $13,743.
Okay, yeah, I apologize, I should have spoke about that. Thank you for bringing that up. So, in the past, on National Night Out, if you look at 0454, we have budgeted approximately $1,500 a year for that. And it does look, if you look at the numbers, again, this is so confusing, you can see that we've spent more than that. However, those other dollars are reimbursed, if you want to say it, by donation monies that we receive. The city only spends $1,500 on Night to Unite. The rest, and Night to Unite costs close to $10,000 to put on. The rest of it isn't all donation funds. So what we did to kind of simplify things and make things easier is we took the $1,500 from 0454 Night to Unite, and if you go 0458, let me find my notes on that. What I did is we added the $1,500 for Night to Unite there, and then we just suggested that we add another $1,500 for community outreach. And what that would include is The Halloween party costs about $1,500 a year to put on, or has in the past. Safety Town, roughly with safety materials and what we have is about $250. And other outreaches, when I say other outreaches, just other minor events that we might attend, we earmarked about another $250 for that. So total of $3,000. What we haven't done in the past is use community outreach for any funding resources. With Night to Unite and the Halloween party and what have you, we really solicit heavy to businesses throughout the city. And we just kind of elected as a department and through administration that, $1,500 to do community outreach is a small price, and then we wouldn't have to ask outside sources for that. We do typically still receive funding for Halloween party and other things, but what we did is try to just lump it into one category that we can use it for everything, if that makes sense.
So the penalty assessment and expenses is, that's why I was,
3.8.
it doesn't have a budget, but it has a.
Okay, so, yep, thank you. Penalty expenses assessment. So when we sell forfeited vehicles that we receive from DWI forfeitures, that money goes into a penalty assessment reserve. Currently, we have, I think, roughly $70,000 in that. I might be off a little bit. So when we purchase, like for example, year one of the in-car camera contract, we purchase that out of forfeiture funds.
Okay.
So that's where you might see that there's an expense to that. However, that is technically paid out of our forfeiture balance.
Okay.
So it's paid out of a reserve. But that's how we code it, if that makes sense. When we buy something, we code it to that line item.
Okay.
But then the city actually expenses it or pays it out of reserves.
Okay.
Okay?
And my only other one was the
Sure.
building and structure. Your actuals were like 10,000, 40,000, and then 0.
So what this was, those are all capital improvement expenditures. So the 40,000 that you see there in 22, that was through if you remember the ARPA dollars that we received funds for. Again, we still expense those to that line item. However, it was paid out of ARPA dollars and different things like that.
No, we don't have any current budget for anything.
I don't have anything currently budgeted for that, given the amount that we were able to do in the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you.
So Corky, I've noticed and you probably addressed it before, but on the workers' compensation, why is that going down in everybody's budget? Or we're budgeting down?
The workers' comp,
Yeah,
we're spreading it out among different departments. Audrey takes the total amount that we're due and has divided it up differently based on employees and the liability. That might be more for police than it is for park and rec.
okay,
We've just separated it out differently.
okay.
The uniform allowances, that's still done by?
Yeah, so that's per
purchase,
contract.
and
That's why
paid by the
I
city.
didn't touch on it because of that. So each officer receives $800 per year per contract. That's what the current contract is. So that number is just 18 times 800. That's where we come up with that amount.
For which one?
And yes, it is.
Uniform allowances.
It is.
But my
That
question
would be
They purchase it and then turn in a receipt. And then
0417.
So did they transfer that balance to the next year if they don't spend it all?
No, that's earmarked for each year. So, in years past, how it has worked is if the number is 800, the second paycheck in January, the city used to pay that officer for that amount in one lump sum, which was taxed heavy. Per state taxing purposes, if you want to call it. What the union elected to do is the city earmarks or holds that money for each employee. There's a policy in detail that says what you can and can't use that money for. So the employee goes out and purchases something, and then they reimburse it for the city, and by doing it that way, they get the full 800 reimbursement versus, say, like a $600 amount after taxes.
And that was negotiated in the last contract. Instead of the check at the beginning of the year, you gotta spend it to use it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that, when I was with the department, we were given that allowance, but they handed over the money, and
we've elected.
guys were not,
Yeah.
some guys
And
were
that
not
was the problem.
spending it on
Yeah.
clothing allowance.
Most of them weren't, and their uniforms started to look like crap. Where this way, it's kind of forcing you to buy it.
Exactly.
Plus, you get dollar for dollar, so.
And it was a win-win situation. It's a
Yes.
win for the city because we're reimbursing, not just paying. It's a win for the department because you have to actually spend the money to keep a good uniform and look sharp and, yep, so it's a win-win.
And we have guidelines on what types or colors of uniforms they can buy, so they purchase it, itemized receipts, and a reimbursement form gets submitted to me, which is signed off on, goes to payroll, and they get a check for that amount that they submit at that time.
Can I just ask, add just one other one, the
Sure.
guns, bolts, and holsters?
Guns, belts, holsters?
Is that?
Yeah.
It says bolts
Sure.
on here.
We're short of money, so we're using bolts.
Does it say
I was
bolts?
like, you
It's
buying
supposed to
some
say
bolts?
belts.
Yeah, it says bolts. You went from your current budget 13 and then your year-to-date's at 18K, but then
Yeah.
you're back to budgeting it to 13. Was that just because you had like new people that you added on?
Yeah, right, the reason
Is that
why we went over
realistic?
that, and it's probably gonna be closer to 20,000 by the time this year is done, is, yeah, that's because of adding, hiring and adding staff.
Okay.
But again, just to, when we onboard a new officer, and that's not including the equipment that we repurpose, it's probably about a $5,000 bill per officer. So again, at that $13,000 mark, anticipating 1.5 to 2 officers per year, roughly $10,000. And then the other would be for replacing, equipment or other things throughout the building that we need to replace, so.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that needed.
Oh, no, I
post
appreciate
need to be
that.
up
I mean,
higher or?
Hopefully, crossing our fingers, we don't end up in the position we were this year anytime soon. But yeah, you're right, it's gonna be closer to 20,000 this year that we'll be spending.
Okay.
I feel comfortable with that amount, I'll just say
Okay.
that, yep.
Okay.
So on the first CIP item is 0550, motor vehicles. So the total cost that we're suggesting there is 55,000. So 40,000 of that is what we've budgeted for, again, I've been in administration for just over 10, 11 years, and that's about the approximate amount, 35 to 40,000 that we've always budgeted. That number increases with obviously inflation on vehicles, and the $40,000 that we budgeted, that allows us to replace 1 squad car per year. The 5 squad cars currently that we have on our rotation, so that means 1 squad car is being replaced every 5 years. We have not been able to order one in 2023. We're hoping that window opens still within the next couple weeks. We check multiple times a week. They assure us that it's going to open soon. So again, we're hoping we can spend the funds from 23 for a car and order one for 24 at the same time. If we end up in 24, my ask would be to reserve the CIP from 23 over to 24, that we could order 2 cars at one shot, because we haven't been able to order a car in a year and a half. And then what I added this year, just as a suggestion, it would be to earmark approximately $15,000 that would go into a reserve to rotate our investigator travel cars, what we call. So we have 4, actually almost 5, but 4 vehicles, we'll say, that we have for investigators and for travel vehicle that are not on a replacement plan. So earmarking that money each year would put those squad cars on approximately a 5 to 6 year rotation.
So that 55,000, that's just the purchase of the vehicle, that's not to equip it?
Correct. That's just purchasing the cars.
That's one, but another 15.
19,000 roughly, and that's in my other equipment as we go through.
Equipment is 19 more.
That's what we'll go through. So the next CIP is 0570, office equipment furnishing. I'm suggesting a $5,000 amount there to replace classroom and break room chairs. Our current classroom chairs and break room chairs are, again, I've been at the police department 20 years. They've been there at least that, and I know they were donated from the library prior to that. Most of them have broken. We don't even really have enough to go around tables, so 5,000 would buy us, if I remember right, about, I want to say 40 chairs or something for classroom and break room. 0580, other equipment. This is where Clayton was asking. So out of that 39,000 that we're suggesting for that, 19,000 would cover safety and emergency replacement and upfit of that service. Again, that's approximately the dollar amount that we ask for each year. I think this year it was 15,000, but again, equipment has increased by over 30% in the last few years. Again, availability and cost is always rising, as we know. We've had some delays on receiving equipment. Typically, once we know we can purchase a squad car, have one on hand, we order that equipment immediately. Another 15,000 I'm asking is for rifle plates, for ballistic plates for the officers' vests. So this plate would go inside their current ballistic vests that each officer is issued. Given the current events in our community and the nation, it's something we've been trying to do for quite a few years. It just hasn't been on a capital improvement. And so that would purchase enough rifle-plated ballistic value to the bulletproof vests for each officer in the department. And then lastly, the $5,000 ballistic, the other $5,000 to total off the $39,000 would be for ballistic. They're transparent patrol shields. So basically what it is, we'd use them for responding to an active shooter, firearms calls, or serious domestics. Each squad car would receive one of them. They're about 2 feet, 3 feet wide by about 2 or 3 feet. They're translucent so you can see through them, and they're rifle rated to stop rifle or pistol rounds. So we would look at purchasing enough for each squad car that would be available for each officer. So kind of a breakdown, I guess, if you look at it, when we kind of trimmed about 22,000 initially out of the budget. However, our budget did increase by about $210,000. 147,000 of that is salaries. The remaining 63,480 would be CIP and line item expenditures that we did increase. So, kind of in a nutshell, I hope I hit enough line items for you guys to understand the increases.
Well, you certainly did for me. I just have a question
Sure.
about, has the city ever looked at grant programs to help fund law enforcement? So I just did a quick Google, and there's the Law Enforcement Support Office, a division under the USDD, Department of Defense. They actually can transfer excess equipment, vehicles, and weapons to local jurisdictions.
So we
Things
utilize
like
that program. We do have some firearms from that. We do look at that often. A lot of the times, if you weren't on it, like kind of like an auction item, if you're not on it the minute it lists, you lose out on it. Downside with some of that stuff is it's, for example, we did obtain a few rifles back in the day from that program, and they were from Vietnam era. They were basically shot when we received them. Not everything is that way, but a lot of it is usually used or has been used in some capacity where the military it's out of service for them and they're passing it on to the civilian market. We also, we have received grants in the past. Last year, Nathan received a grant which we utilized for breaching equipment. We received a few $1,000s that way. We just reapplied for that also to try to help us fund maybe some of these shields or something. We would know before the final budget if we received those grants. So if we did receive that, we would reflect that in our current budget. Unfortunately, these ballistic rated rifle plates, they don't qualify for reimbursement under the federal bulletproof vest program, unfortunately. But not to use Fargo as an example, but a couple of those officers, if they didn't have those plates, there would have been more officers that were killed that day. It's almost getting to the point, I would say, that not issuing these to the officers is the same as not giving a firefighter turnout gear to go on a fire anymore. So, they're a significant cost, but they would last for at least 5 years before we would have to look at replacing those ballistic plates or whatnot. And as capital improvements move forward, we would look at earmarking or trying to fund that as we move forward.
I was gonna ask that question. What can go wrong with that type of equipment that would cause them to expire?
So all ballistic vests, the bulletproof vests and these plates, they only warranty them, if you want to say, for 5 years. Does that mean that they won't stop a bullet after 5 years? No, but just put into context, you're outside, they're getting rained on, they're getting wet, your body's sweat, the humidity and everything. It's just like everything else. They start to tear and break down, and just over time, from the constant flexing and moving of that equipment, they just wear out.
Not just that, other stuff in other industries, the manufacturers put expiration dates on, so they sell more.
That's exactly what it is. You're absolutely right. We joke at that often where the equipment is out of service or out of date and it still seems to work fine, but
Yeah, just the issue here is the liability when it comes to that stopping the bullet.
Of course, that's what we talked about, it's a judgment call.
Can I ask, I'm just trying to figure this out. So on the other equipment, how much of, what of the capital improvement things fall under that? Other
Okay,
equipment?
sorry, so there's 3 items under the other equipment, so it's a total of $39,000. Of that $39,000, $19,000 would be used to replace the emergency equipment in the squad car.
Okay.
So to purchase, replace, and upfit, what we call install it.
Okay.
That's $19,000. $15,000 would be used to purchase those rifle ballistic plates that, the nice thing is the current vests, outer carriers and vests that we currently have our officers using, these are made from that manufacturer just to slip right inside the current vest, which really is a cost savings. As you know, a bulletproof vest costs about $1,500. So we wouldn't have to repurchase any current materials that we have. So $15,000 would be earmarked for that. It's approximately $800 per officer per ballistic plate. And that's just ones in the front. Per FBI statistics and all the guidelines is they're suggesting not to put them in the back because nobody gets shot in the back. So everybody is just buying them for the front. And then $5,000, the remainder of that $39,000 is would be used to purchase ballistic transparent patrol shields for each squad car.
Okay, so that's it. When you say that, that's the rifle plates, the body armor rifle plates, is that the 15?
Correct, $15,000, and then $5,000 is to purchase approximately 6 ballistic shields. So again, we have 5 squad cars, and that would leave 1 for investigation or drug task force use in the office.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bernard. Tim? I'll just add that in '22, I worked with Detective Grabowski and Detective Brecken, and we did purchase their Surface Pros on a grant as well. That was about $3,000.
Just looking for the cheese.
We did get one more grant for some medical equipment.
Yeah.
We were able to upfit all the squad cars with new backpacks with medical gear for responding to medical emergencies as well.
Basically turned carrying 3 bags into 1. It was, but very expensive stuff with you. We not saying we hit every grant, but we try. We really work hard on that.
Isn't that kind of part of your line item? That's the state grants and others?
Correct. That's where we'd receive.
So
those
that's
funds.
like 100,000 at least?
Yep, that would, I'm sorry, which line item, just somewhere on the same page?
3422 on intergovernmental revenue.
Yes, that would come under that line item also. Currently, right now, the monies that you're seeing for there is for, again, what I call the PA1 grant. It's money received from the state to subsidize the retirement or PERA contributions. But if we do receive other monies, yes, that would be one spot that we'd receive that in.
So what's the life expectancy of a camera?
Of a what?
Camera, body cam?
So those are, so when we buy these, when we buy body cameras and in-car cameras, we buy them through what's called a TAP plan, Technology Assurance Plan. So with that, and that's what the TASER that I'm suggesting we purchase, or we're gonna need to purchase also under a TAP plan, Technology Assurance Plan. So that's a full coverage warranty. So like if you drop it in the river, drive over it, lose it, they'll replace it, no questions asked. That also involves with the body cameras every 2.5 years, you receive new cameras, new equipment. For the cars, it would be every 5 years, they would send you new equipment and install for that. The tasers, same thing, they'd be on a 5-year replacement plan. So like everything, there's always these annual fees, but I mean, at the end of the day, what it would cost us to replace them or from damaged products or what have you, or to keep on the cutting edge of technology as we're trying to do, that's the best way to do that.
Well, and we're also competing with designed obsolescence. So, they manufacture things to wear out.
Yes.
It's capital.
It's even like we joke about our squad cars in the last 3 years, 4 years for sure, they've changed something every year. We've had to purchase different, from tire size to the doghouse inside the car where equipment won't fit to, yes, they're forcing you to buy new equipment every few years. So it's unfortunate, but gotta have it. So again, if there's any other questions, I hope I covered everything of interest there. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Andy.
Okay, we are adjourned.